Welcome to Table Talk, the place for deep conversations in the Geekverse. And trust me, when we tear into a subject, we go deep. I'm Heath, and I'll be your host. Each episode, I'll be talking with one or more creators, authors, illustrators, publishers, or other movers and shakers in games, TV, books, movies, or other areas of the Geekverse. Regular guests include Douglas A. Burton, the author of Faraway Bird, a multi-award-winning historical fiction novel of the Byzantine Empress Theodora. He's also the author of The Heroine's Labyrinth, an alternative story structure to the hero's journey that often occurs in stories with feminine heroes. That structural framework frequently comes up in our analysis of story. Brianna De Silva, she's the director and co-writer of The Cultists, a Lovecraftian comedy mockumentary-style web show here on YouTube, and the author of The City of Reckoning, an epic fantasy novel of political intrigue, the ethics of war, and young love. Cameron Pasha is a screenwriter, director, novelist, and was a writer and producer on the series Kings, a producer on NBC's Bionic Woman, and a co-producer and writer for Sleeper Cell. He's also written for the CW series Nikita and Roswell, New Mexico. He's been breaking news from inside Lucasfilm, Disney, and Hollywood. His analysis and commentary have become very popular on YouTube. We regularly meet to discuss and analyze stories, and when we do, we dive into graduate-level seminars on story structure and writing. Come on in and let's go deep. And when I say we're going deep, I mean you'd better bring your hard suit. Other guests have included Lou Anders, the author of the Thrones and Bones fantasy novels, Once Upon a Unicorn, the creator and publisher of the Norengard RPG, and the author of Star Wars, A Pirate's Price, the book that explains why the Millennium Falcon is on the planet Batu at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Mark Tassin, the creator of the World of Ataltis, head of Mechanical Muse, former director of the Gen Con Writers Symposium, and the head developer of the new Cool Name RPG. Let's see, who else?
Bond. James Bond.
Well, not James Bond. Not yet. Maybe soon, though. But I have interviewed Jamie Stegmaier, the founder of Stonemaier Games, crowdfunder extraordinaire, and publisher of many hit board games like Scythe and Wingspan. Brian Colin, sculptor of the world of Revelo Monster Busts, and the creator of the vast, grim, dark horror RPG. Ajit George, the Dungeons & Dragons author. We talked about game writing, education, and his contribution to Van Richter's Guide to Ravenloft and the development of the Journeys to the Radiant Citadel.
I am Hela, Odin's firstborn, commander of the legions of Asgard, the rightful heir to the throne and the goddess of death.
Well, actually, that interview got rather spicy, so I think I'd better just keep that one to myself. Kate Wilson, a YouTuber, actress, host, and prolific geek guru who's now working to make a new show dedicated to the world of tabletop gaming a reality. So buckle up and get ready for a wild ride, because it's time to explore the worlds of tabletop gaming, sci-fi, fantasy, and all of geekdom through the eyes of those who are making things happen.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger, ready to move out.
It's time for Table Talk. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to my home, welcome to the office, and welcome to Table Talk. Tonight, we are going to be talking about world building, which is a huge topic, and who knows, it probably is going to be the case that we'll identify lots of subtopics that are going to have to go over probably multiple days, but you know, that's how we do things here on Table Talk. In order to have this discussion on world building, we have two favorites from the show with us tonight. First, Douglas A. Burton. Doug's back.
All right. How's everybody doing?
Hey, Doug. And then also Brianna De Silva. Hey, Brianna.
Okay, so is that a new intro? Because I was laughing at the hello part. I don't think I've seen that before.
I saw you laughing at that. I made that at the same time I made the trailer, so I know you commented on the trailer.
That's funny. Somehow I missed that.
Well, not all parts of it were the same, but I recut a new beginning at the same time I cut the trailer. I did both of those at the same time, so we have a new beginning, so that it goes better with the show as it has evolved.
As it has evolved, yeah.
Yes, because I made that first trailer, that first beginning. Like I went through all that, and then like the next week, Doug started coming on.
Yeah. Now he's like your most recurring guest. So.
Right. So yes, with that new intro, we've got that in. So let's see. We got James Bacon here. We've got Sable Phoenix got chicken for dinner here, ready to come on in. Stray, welcome, Stray. We've got Stray.
Stray, who is not Sky, not Sky Stray.
which is not Sky in disguise, correct? Zero the Blade. YouTube user, we know who you are.
I love that clever name.
We know who you are. Factotum is here. Let's see. We got Multiverse DM. Welcome.
Awesome, everybody.
Let's see. Yes, we have a huge crew tonight. So this is wonderful. Welcome to everyone. Thank you so much to everybody who's watching live tonight, and welcome to everybody who will be watching on replay. We really appreciate everyone who is here. Doug, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Doug Burton.
No.
And,
Are you sure?
I'm an author. I have written so far one historical fiction book about Empress Theodora. Right there, Faraway Bird. I would love it if you read it and gave me your thoughts on it. It is available on audiobook. So if you're an audiobook person, it's got original music. It's got lyrics. It's got all sorts of cool stuff in it to really capture that time period. And then, of course, I've got The Heroine's Labyrinth, which is a nonfiction book coming out early next year, February 2024, which we've discussed on this show, and this show has been a big part of. So excited about that one as well.
All right. Brianna.
Mm-hmm.
She's the author of City of Reckoning, which, as I showed on the morning grind this morning.
And I don't have a copy of my own book right now.
Or actually, I might not have showed this off on the morning grind because I think it showed up in my mailbox after the morning grind today. But so I think this is the first time it's been on screen. So I got a copy here. Look at this brick of a book.
It's no joke.
760 pages, 780 pages.
Book.
It's about
Quite a first book.
Words, I think. 1,000.
What was the word count?
So, somewhere around 250,000-ish.
Oh my God.
But yeah.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah. I cut out 10,000 words.
And there's deleted scenes.
Yeah.
Right. You can go over here to subscribe to get the deleted scenes. It's not enough for you.
So if you need 300,000 words, try that.
No, it's not that many more.
I know, I'm kidding.
Actually, a lot that got removed is not even in those deleted scenes. Anyway.
I just put get the deleted scenes right there, or get the book. Go ahead.
You would want to get the book first, because if you read the deleted scenes out of context, it would not mean anything to you. But but yeah, so I have a newsletter, like he was saying. You can get those deleted scenes, but also I send out a newsletter once a month, letting people know what I'm up to. And it's
awesome.
There's an insider, you get to see things other people don't get to see. I let people beta read some of my stuff. That's probably not always going to be an option, but for now it is. So yep, it's been awesome. And
very cool.
James Bacon he read one of my screenplays, and
I think I saw him say that in the comments, that he's working his way through it and he really likes it. He recommends it already.
Thanks.
And by the way, cool cover. That's a very cool cover.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, dang it. I can't remember the name of the people that did it for me, but they're really cool. Let's give them a call out. It's literally, wait, I could remember. I think it's literally just designforwriters.com. It's something really basic like that, but they're based out in the UK. So
very cool. Well, they did a good job with it. I like the orange is very startling, and that's good for, I think what you're going for there.
It's angry, which is the exact right tone for the book.
Awesome.
So, yes.
All right. So on Amazon, City of Reckoning, but then also I posted the link to subscribe to Brianna's newsletter. So if you want to know what's going on with her, that's the best way to get in touch with Brianna and follow her is through this subscription right here on her website, briannadesilva.blog/subscribe. Also going on here, let's see. I will point out that we are, hopefully you are listening. I hope you are listening over here on the new Table Talk channel. I'll just post a link here, Table Talk channel, because I'm simultaneously broadcasting on the Table Talk channel and the Heath's Geekverse channel for now. I'll turn this video private on Heath's Geekverse once we're done, so that Table Talk will be its permanent home. Eventually, another month or two or whatever, we'll be only broadcasting on the Table Talk channel, but I want to give everybody time to make sure they migrate, because it's much better. It's actually doing much better having branding over here on the Table Talk channel. So if you're watching on Heath's Geekverse, Table Talk channel, I'm putting the link to the Table Talk channel over here. Please do come over here. And if you would watch over there, because We're not monetized over on Table Talk, the dedicated Table Talk channel yet. We need to get to 500 subscribers. We have 297 right now, and we need to get to, I forget what it's like, 3,000 watch hours or something. So if you subscribe and watch over on the Table Talk channel, that would help us out. So that's what's going on there. Also, let's see. Oh, that's me. So I'll hold. Okay, I should have said that. But also, we have a TikTok now.
Yeah.
This is, if you were over on TikTok, Table Talk TikTok. That's not Table Talk.
Watch out, Gen Z.
Whoa, yeah.
Watch out, we're coming for you.
Table Talk TikTok is now up. So if you're on TikTok, there is the link in the chat to Table Talk TikTok.
That's not fun to say.
We
That's
have
4 T's in a row. That's
followers.
serious
Way too many
alliteration.
T's and K's. That's
We've been putting out. Look, we got Retro Nerd Girl over here.
Table
we got all
Talk.
kinds of things over here. We got
You should call it Table Talk. James has a
over
perfect.
here Table Talk. Yes.
Table Talk.
That's perfect, James. That's awesome.
That's actually pretty funny.
So over there. So if you're on that, let's go. We're putting out shorts from the show over there. And by the way, Doug's going viral over here. Doug has 75.7 thousand views now.
What?
75,000 views.
Which one was that?
That's the one where you're talking about using the world between worlds to potentially erase the Star Wars sequel trilogy.
Oh,
Apparently, that's what people want to talk about on
Yeah,
TikTok.
they want
That's what people
it.
want to talk about.
That's the one.
75,000.7 views
That's crazy.
on that video. Let me just see. It's got.
I want to see what the comments are.
It's got. Look, we got tons of. It's got 217 comments.
Oh, nice.
It's been liked 2,379 times.
How many dislikes?
That doesn't tell you. I don't know.
Wow.
There's some people who don't like it.
I'm
There's
sure
always the
somebody-
haters, but those are my favorite. I love the internet's haters. That's what makes the internet
They're so
good.
passionate.
But
Yes.
that's what people like, apparently. That was what people on TikTok like. That's what they want to talk about. So erasing the Star Wars sequel trilogy. That was
We'll have to do a few more discussions on it
For the
also-
views.
for the views.
We also have an Instagram. Table Talk Instagram. I just got this started a couple of days ago.
If you love
awesome.
Table Talk, we're everywhere you want us.
We are everywhere you want to find us. So we're also posting that to Instagram.
We are
So in
everywhere.
there,
We
you're
are
on
in your
Instagram.
home and on your phone.
Yeah, and people are watching over there too. Like we said, I just got started, so I haven't posted as much over there. But like, like this one's got 4,434 views.
And now
on
it has
Instagram?
11. Cool.
1,000.
Contrast.
Yeah, 111. We
And
got.
that's when you know it's organic. When you have some that just randomly are more than others, it's like, okay, well, that
Totally.
one's clearly organically, happening.
So that's over there. And then
Wow.
also I'll say my book right here is Goodnight Sword, which is my children's book. I'm going to be re-releasing this on Instagram. If you have kids if you have kids in your life who are of the age for Goodnight Moon, but you would like for them to have something a bit geekier, Goodnight Sword is really what you want to read to them. It's for that age group. It's the first book that's been released in the Tales of Rabavania. You can get a free digital copy, complete free digital copy over there. In the when you log in, put your email address in there, you'll get a completely free copy of that book. It's the complete free copy, so you can be reading it to your kids tonight, and then I will let you know when it goes live on Instagram to do some more hard copies.
And you're about to close a bulk sale, aren't you?
Yes. Yes, which is fantastic. But also I gave a preview on the Morning Grind this morning of my Christmas story. Which is my Christmas story going dark. I previewed it this morning on the Morning Grind, and I just basically finished it this afternoon. I was reading it out loud to myself, and Brianna and Doug are going to get copies of that, the complete Christmas story, to beta read, and then I'm going to release that before Christmas as well. It's the Christmas story, but it goes dark. I mean, it goes dark.
It's dark Christmas. That
Yes.
was my joke earlier. Because he was
That's
reading
exactly
my screenplay, Dark Goddess, and it's like, where it's all dark. We got Dark Goddess, we got Dark Christmas. So, yeah.
And I was like, Heath, I'm looking for a Christmas story that's also disturbing. Do you have anything?
All right, I got it.
This is something very specific I want right now. Heath says, I can deliver.
I've got it. So that is coming. That's coming. Look for that next week.
No one's ready for this Christmas.
All right. All right. So let's get to the topic. Now, I know you guys have a lot of notes on this. So I'm going to leave.
I'm completely unprepared. I'm just here.
You're just here. Okay. Well,
That's not true.
I know. the reason, so Doug, I guess I'll start it off with this by saying Doug had actually been one of the first ones to say, let's do one on world building. And I think it's a good idea because I love world building, and we talk about world building, have talked about world building on the Morning Grind. We haven't been able to do world building Wednesdays in the last couple of months, which I hate, and I know people are looking for, but we do. So it's something we talk about. So I definitely think it should come over here to Table Talk. But it's set to me that in and of itself is such a broad topic. World building, that can mean everything, anything. We've gone over the world building guides from Dungeons and Dragons, like advanced world building on the Morning Grind on the Heath's Geekverse channel, and what it talks about, and everything's in that. We've done world building from the RPG perspective, but actually the first kind of thing that I thought of was then, well, I mean, what are you talking about when you're talking about world building? Are you talking about for a role-playing game? Are you talking about for a movie? Are you talking about for a book? I mean, are you talking about world building just for its own sake and its own enjoyment, which is definitely a thing for the sake of create. So what are you talking about? So that was when I was like, I don't even know how to start with just a topic world building because I want to know what you were talking about. But it seemed like you both had a whole bunch of notes that could start with this. So I'll leave it to you guys.
So if Brianna and I wrote a book on world building, it would probably be about. I'll just frame it briefly that it's such an attractive topic, I think, for creatives because it's fundamental for creativity. You know, you can have characters, you can have all these things, but when you start to zoom in to see what they're wearing, to see what's behind them, to see what's out their window. How many of us when we were young and creative drew entire world maps of fantasy places? Oh, this is the Bay of Kalbadar, whatever.
Right.
This is the mountain chain and I've done this hundreds of times where you make all these worlds and you name everything. And then as you get older, they start to get really advanced and you start getting very detailed and your cultures start to blend out. And, it becomes almost an obsession, I would say, for creative people. And I know creatives that get lost in the world building phase. They never come out of it, which is a common pitfall, I believe, where they have journals and they love to read their like Doug, 84, and they'll read all this stuff. I'm like, man, that's great. But for what? Like, what are you going to use it for? And I think he's just using it just for play. That's his playtime, just to world build. So, and there's value in that too. But I think ultimately world building is for a purpose. For me, it has usually been role-playing world building because I usually am the dungeon master for role-playing games. And I have an open world strategy. So I like to come up with a lot, sometimes too much. And then for writing novels, those are really the purpose for me for world building. Everything I do for world building is called into service for those two purposes.
Yeah, I the pitfall that can happen with overly building a world is something that I definitely want to talk about because it's something that I've kind of shifted my way of thinking about that, or at least I've shifted how I world build. And so I'll talk about City of Reckoning and kind of my approach with that world and like how I've been lately with different worlds. I'll get into that more into depth, but just to kind of like start framing the conversation. The way I think about world building is it's just like, it's one of those things where in the broadest possible sense, every single story actually has world building. Even if you are, telling a story that's set in like a modern day, small town in Vermont, whatever, you have to know what that small town in Vermont is like. Even if you're going and, if it's based off of a real place, you're still bringing in what details are important for that story. And you need to know like what the rules are of this world. Like no matter how small it is. I have one thing that I'm working on that is set in a cult and it's like very small. It's a Huron's Labyrinth story, I realized. And it's very small and isolated in terms of like the scope of where we move geographically in that story, but world building is still coming in because I need to figure out, okay, what is this cult? How does it operate? What are the cultural elements of it? What are the rules? And so no matter what kind of story you're telling, no matter how much it's based in real life or whether it's, a complete fantastical, imaginary world, you always are figuring out what are the rules of this setting and how does that impact the story? Maybe that's like the broadest possible way of thinking about world building as far as I'm concerned so far. Like, as I've thought about it, where it's just like you need to know, how your characters are interacting with this environment, how that environment is enhancing the story that you're trying to tell.
Yeah, I actually have devised some strategies to help me zoom in to what is the most pertinent. Again, the friend that loves to world build and only world build, part of his problem is that he can't figure out a single story. And then when he does try to zoom in on a story, he tries to include characters from every single corner of his globe that he's spent. And I'm like, no. It's really best to save that and figure out the beauty and the dynamics of just your first setting. If you can establish that first setting and make people can't wait to turn the page because their imaginations are filling up with things they've never seen before with your words, then you've got them. And now you can expand on to the next thing. In fact, I love the idea of building out that first scene and hooking people in it and then slowly building out. And then before you know it, if you've done a good job, there's an entire world, not in your head, just in your head, but in everyone who's read your book. They're a part of it now and it's in there. And then you can move pieces around and people around inside that universe. And real quick, that guy in the sky asked if I have read Blade the Poisoner. I have not. I wrote it down, that title. That sounds pretty cool. I'm assuming it's a fantasy story. Just answer in the chat whenever you get a chance. But I wrote it down. I have quite a few books in my queue now, but I will get to it at some point for sure.
What you just said about like starting small and building out, that was very much how I tried to approach with City of Reckoning, because that's like, if you have a world that's very big and complex, like you have to do that. Like that's because you don't want people to feel overwhelmed, and you want them to be interested. You want them to know more, and so it's like starting with another thing that I think I could have done better in that book that I've grown a bit since then is just like really focusing on what is it that. So this is assuming you've made like a more complicated world. Like you need to focus on what is it that your readers or your viewers need to know at that moment. And like you reveal the information they need for the story right before they need it, not anytime sooner. Because if it's anytime sooner, it feels like info dumping. And it has to be, again, what is actually relevant to the story. So if you've developed all this history and stuff, like nobody cares. Like that's the harsh truth. Literally nobody cares. And it's great that you have built that. Potentially, we'll go back to that subject in a minute. But like, at the end of the day, what you're doing right now when you're telling a story is you're telling a story. And so that's what you have to remember, is that like you want people to be interested in your world. And hopefully if they've enjoyed the story enough and they've enjoyed the characters, then you can have that other information like for the extreme fans, that want to know all the other stuff. And then it's there. But yeah, I love that idea about like, all right, let's start with a small, intimate part of this world, like right here. And we'll just kind of, radiate out a little bit. And then you can tell that there's more out there, but we don't need to show you all that. You just need to know, you just need to see what's relevant for the story.
Well, and in my thinking too, it's like, if you can't sell me in a single setting that you have thought this out, then you really have no business in building out the rest of that world yet, because I call it where the rubber meets the road. That's how I tell myself. Because sometimes, you know how it is, Brianna and Heath, I'm sure you too, where you have this enormity of details and broad like universe. And then it's really hard to zoom into a single room, a single setting with this character and only that character, and all that other stuff goes away. That's where the rubber meets the road from all the grandiose, vivid imagination, world building you've done. You have to be able to zoom into that where the rubber meets the road, and then sell me that sell me that you can write something compelling there. Because, and when I say sell me, I mean to myself, even like, Doug, you have to sell that, your audience, that you can build out this one setting. So very important. And that rubber meets the road gets tricky, because the broad strokes, like I'm sure somebody either in the chat or Heath and Brianna, you have read both Game of Thrones and the Song of Fire and Ice, which is like George R.R. Martin's Silmarillion. And that reads like a history book. So a lot of times when you're doing world building, it's got this history book sound to it. And then you got to shift over and you got characters there. And suddenly it's like, but this is the era of iron. That means nothing, to this room. How does that work in this room? Mm-hmm. So it gets tricky to cross that bridge.
Well, that goes to a point that I know that I hit in another stream. And actually somebody commented on that stream a while back ago that was like, I love it. Heath says not to belabor the point after belaboring the point for 2.5 hours. So it may have been this point that history is not story. And so when you start developing the world and you're doing the world building, you can get very detailed with the history and all that and what happens in this world. I know because I've done it, and that is all great, but it's so important to remember that history that you're writing is not the story. Once you've got all that laid out, it's then your job as a separate issue, and that's why I'm separating world building from the story construction, is then to look at all that you have and go, where is the story? Now, where is the story in all of this? So
I don't necessarily separate them. I do think that world building is part of it. However, that's why I added that distinction, purpose. It's important for you, the creative, to define the purpose of your world building. If it's just to have fun and build out a world for your own imagination, then have at it. If it's to write a story, then you have to keep that purpose in mind.
Well, let me tell you what I mean by separating them. Because my goal has been to develop 2 worlds: the Tales of Rabavania and Theophany. Okay, so what does that mean to do these worlds? Like, what does that mean? So that's a question that you've got to answer. And it could mean to do a story. It could mean to do a movie. It could, a novel. It could mean to do a movie. It could mean to do an RPG campaign setting. It could mean a lot of things. It could mean to do a YouTube channel. Like, what does that mean? So I realized that I was conflating all of my world building with the story. And so what I need to do was completely separate those things. So that I can do, I've written a 5,000 word RPG world primer for Rabavania. It's just world building. And it's James has edited it, so it's going to be coming out next year. So if you just want the world building because you want a setting to play a game, I can just lean into all of the world building. I don't have to worry about the story. It's the setting right as the story is going to start that I'm writing. But here's all of that, and I just put all of that, and I can go into as much detail about their nobility, the hierarchy of their nobility, whatever their religions, whatever I want, because people are expecting that in an RPG book. And that's just a separate task that goes into that book. And then it's time to just mentally switch and go, now it's story time.
Yeah. In fact, one little exercise I've done that has helped is when I'm trying to transition from the broad strokes world building to rubber meeting the road, is I just start having characters talk. I'll just start writing scenes with dialogue where characters are going back. It's specifically where they're explaining something about the world to other characters. So what happens is it goes from me to characterize, a character from that era. Maybe they're sitting at a tavern next to a guy at the bar and he's explaining something that this guy doesn't understand. So he's explaining it in his work. That little exercise has helped me out. It gets me into a scene and out of my intellectual brain. And it's funny too, because I did that for the current book I'm writing, Empress Theodora book 2. And I didn't use any of it. I did it and it was a bridge only, but it got me there. So
yeah, that's interesting what Heath is bringing up about the world of because world building for a game is like its own beast, and that's something that I can't speak to because I'm not a game creator like Heath is. But I bet that's worth bringing up in the conversation about like if your world built, and this is speaking broadly, whether it's like a table tabletop game, I can think what the term was, or if you're doing a video game or whatever it is, if there's some sort of world that you're interacting with, you're building the world in that case for a player experience where it's like you want so that they have this experience where they can explore and they can interact with all these things. And so that's the purpose of that world. And so there's like levels of detail that are going to be important there that may not be important, say, if you're writing a novel or if you're writing a screenplay. And so it becomes a different beast. And so there's like the point, the purpose of that world is important. Like what Doug was saying, maybe you're just having fun and you're just building a world for fun, which is totally valid, you know? But so I think you need to know what it is that your goal is, like why you're world building. Is it for fun? Is it to build a game experience? Is it to develop the setting for a story? And that will help inform how much you need to do or should do, and at what point you can stop, because that's one of the problems, that if it can, and this is something that I've run into myself, where you get so, like, you can get so stuck there because it's literally infinite. Like there's no obvious point where to stop. And so you have to recognize the sort of the law of diminishing returns, where it's like, there is a point where to continue, it isn't actually going to help with your goals, unless your goal is simply to have fun or whatever. But yeah.
Well, and what's interesting too, I've recently read Dune, and I was amazed at how quickly he was able to establish certain details about his world without embellishing any of it. And you know how Hemingway is very concise and brief. So is Frank Herbert. He just has these words that, like, the word itself whisks you away. And I was just amazed at how economical he was at building his entire world and really universe sparingly. I mean, that's a skill in and of itself.
I need to read that one soon.
Yeah, I need to read that one too, because we need to go over Dune here, especially as the new one comes out.
Right.
But, you know,
like you watch the movie and you see it all. And then when I read the book again, because I read it a long time ago, but I don't remember it, so I reread it, and it's all in there. But maybe one sentence it addresses it. And I'm like, wow, all of that in the film comes from this one sentence. And I'm like, that's pretty amazing. That's economical. And every writer is different, but he was an economical writer and very, very good at it.
Well, this on this point with regard to Tolkien, there's a lot of words in Tolkien. He goes off on a lot of things and describe the walking or whatever. But in other regards, it's often like you described, Doug. Like when you go to something like, knowing that, Tolkien is so renowned for verbosity and all that. Then, like, when you encounter Elrond, what does Elrond look like? And yet, when you actually get to the description of Elrond, there's not a lot there.
Right. He was definitely an author who loved places. I think a little bit more than people, which is fine, because his world is unforgettable. Like, it has been lodged into the mind of hundreds of millions of people, if not billions by now.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, every author has a different focus, and that's what makes world building so fun. The author gets to choose where to put that, flashlight.
I've gotten behind in the comments. I'm just gonna have to start. We were paying attention to other things.
Well, and someone mentioned that Dune. I think the next comment, he's right. It gets really hard to follow after the the first two books. I'm trying. I'm actually on the third book. Third book right now, and he skips a lot, so you have to kind of figure out where they're at and everything. But that first book is so incredible. The plot line in it is pretty amazing. I actually wonder if George Lucas got Order 66 from Dune.
I mean, I'm sure. I feel like Dune. I've heard people say Dune is to modern sci-fi what Lord of the Rings is to fantasy. So there's a lot of influence there.
A lot of everything in it, because it's source code.
Indirect influence, right? Like, it's influenced things that have influenced things, but still.
Yeah. Well, so I would say one of the big things that I do to help me kind of dial it in is I write down story universe. What is the story universe? And that's a specific question. What are the places that are going to be included in the story that you're telling? So this is for fiction writing or role playing, screenwriting. It would apply as well. If, like, for example, in Faraway Bird, Constantinople, Alexandria, and Susa, which is modern day Benghazi, actually, in Libya. So and by the way, and those two cities take up a small amount of the story, relatively speaking, but it was covered that she was there. She's in that setting. She's in that setting. So my story universe was pretty much the Byzantine Empire, 6th century, mainly Constantinople, some Alexandria, and some Susa. That's my story universe. Doesn't matter that Rome's out there. It doesn't matter that, the steppes are being inhabited by the Huns, or, all of that. You just cut it out. It doesn't mean you forget it. It might be relevant to the world at the time. It might be something they're discussing. But in terms of defining what you're going to build out, draw a line around your story universe. And that's my note. What is your story universe? Define it to the best of your ability if you're early on in the story, and stick to it, because that's where you could start to focus your story. So anyway, that's one of my first steps for world building, specifically for storytelling.
Well, that's an interesting point, Doug. I don't think that necessarily I would have even thought of when I was thinking about this subject more broadly, but you're in a great position to speak to, because when I think of world building, I think of like sci-fi or fantasy world building, something that doesn't exist. But you're talking about a historical time period. Well, but you're still trying to build out a world for your story, so for it to inhabit. So
and like I said, even if it's a small town in Vermont in modern day, you still have to world build.
That's your story universe. So you have to take that very seriously. And let me just say, I'm in a unique position because I love fantasy, love sci-fi, and I love history. And I'm writing about the Byzantine Empire. Name a movie that is set in the Byzantine Empire. Go ahead. I'll wait.
No.
It's blacked out. It's a Roman world divorced from Europe. It's not the grand imperial legionnaires of Rome. This is a dying world. This is a world clinging. So it's this whole other thing. So I remember the first time I was really in a writing class and writing about the Byzantine Empire, and I was speaking about the turbaned Persian kings, and the Roman emperor who wears these gowns and all this stuff. And it's a Christian empire, not pagan. And I was like, this sounds like fantasy. It sounds like fantasy because it's a setting that we just don't see. There's very few books on it, especially when I first got into it. There's almost no movies. For whatever reason, this 1,100-year empire is completely blacked out from Hollywood. I don't know why. I don't think there's a conspiracy theory. Some people do.
People just haven't discovered that it can be romanticized yet, I suppose.
Oh my God. And it's so amazing. So when I'm writing my history book, just so you know, it feels like I am working on a medieval fantasy story, because I'm showing there's extinct Christian religions running around, like in power, like pushing, attacking other Christian religions that have survived. And there are still pagans. This is the last era of paganism. So what does that look like? So all of these things are there, and it's a multicultural, diverse empire that is really there for survival. They're trying to survive the darkness of the Dark Age, and they do. And by doing so, they end up becoming this whole separate empire. So for me, when I'm talking about my history book, it absolutely applies to science fiction and absolutely applies to fantasy.
Cool.
Okay. Let's look at comments. Are there things that we need to see here? I think, as Sable says, that's something I've said many times. Dune is the science fiction epic, the touchstone. Now that's another topic, factotum. World building in shared settings among authors. That one is no, that's a great subtopic.
That's
right
something
there.
I want to do one of these days. I have a lot of stories I'm working on, if you can't tell. Last I counted, I had 12. So anyway, last I counted. So, and one of the ones that I'm working on, it's a science fiction world, and that's what I want to do. I want to set it up. That's going to be fun, because that one is going to be I'm going to set up a world and then tell a story. I already know what the story broadly would be. But then I really want that one to be a shared one. So that's like one of the things that you have to do then is whoever's creating the world, you have to establish, you are going to have to really clearly establish the basics of how this world works, what its parameters are, how things what it would mean to go outside of, or to go against the kind of rules of the world, so that people then have the freedom and flexibility to create new things and still be within that story universe, if that makes sense. So that's I feel like you have to have, there's that authoritative beginning framework, and then that gives you the room to play.
Like the Constitution.
The Constitution, yeah.
I have this in my back of my head, this might not be for 10 years, but I'd have to kind of clear out my slate of projects too.
Right.
But I've thought in the back of my head, I'm like, wouldn't it be cool to collaborate with Cameron Pasha, where I write the Byzantine side and he writes the Islamic side of like these epic events, like the fall of Constantinople or the 7th century when when these cultures really started clashing. I thought it'd be awesome to work with him, but it's so far down the road, I'm not even going to mention it to him until
he won't watch this, or just
Well, on the collaborative side, two people who've done this who have been on this channel before are Mark Tassin. Mark Tassin with the World of Ataltis. It started with an RPG, but then the book, The Champions of Ataltis, which I have over there, he then reached out to other authors to write short stories, and he put together an anthology in the World of Ataltis.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I talked to him about that. And he's been interviewed on this channel. So Mark Tassin has some information on this, on that subject, on this channel. But then also Lou Anders has done the same thing. Lou has put together Norengard, and he created this world, which is something else we can think about, which is kind of like what I'm thinking about here. That he said, I'm creating a world so that I can tell my stories in it for the rest of my life. So he created Norengard is actually one country in it. It's the world of Qualth is the entire world. And Qualth is actually the direction of the map that looks at you. Interestingly.
Whoa. Wait, what?
Yeah, Qualth is actually a direction, the direction on the map that is toward you. And so that's the name of his world, Qualth.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Instead of just north, south, east, west, there's also that third dimension pointing at you.
Not up, that's looking at you.
That's
Qualth.
pretty cool. I love that.
And so he has written 3 different novels in that, and then which have been traditionally published, but then also he self-published his RPG set in that world, focused on Norengard. But then he recently went out to publish Stokey's Hall, which is also sitting on the other side of my room. It's over there, Stokey's Hall, which he also went out to have other people publish in it. So he went out and got other authors, including Ed Greenwood, to write a novel, write a short story, and then publish them as an anthology. So yeah, collaborative world building. There is other information on that here. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Asimov gave us the 3 laws of robotics. Philip K. Dick and Robert Heinlein gave us tons of ideas, but in Dune, Herbert gave us the bedrock.
Yeah, man, there's obviously so
poetic right there.
Influences that created the science fiction genre, but it's like, yeah.
Now, Discworld. I don't know anything about Discworld. Do you guys know Discworld?
I do not.
No, I mean, I've heard about it, but
I've heard of it too. I mean, we might have to get into that in the morning grind one day, because
I go through phases where I just get in this kick for science fiction and my appetite is unlimited, and I read all the science fiction, and then suddenly I'm done. And now I need fantasy or historical fiction or something nonfiction like economics or something. And so I tend to binge read genres.
That's interesting.
Frederick says, do you know England had a king that summoned demons to build a bridge in France? I did not, but it sounds like something I need to read about.
That sounds like something a king in England would do.
That's a cool story idea, man. Like that'd be fun to write about, or even a short story that'd be fun to write about.
Are you still going through the comments? I have a
no, go ahead. No, that's it. That's how it's spelled. Qualth. Yeah. The direction on a standard map that is toward the reader, more commonly referred to as up when standing.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. I've never thought of that. That's a super cool detail.
Yeah. Up, the less epic sounding word.
Yeah, I did collab. Yeah, correct.
Let's see. Also known as.
I had a buddy who he and I collaborated for years on a fantasy world, and it was really cool. It was all about these like large birds that you could ride on, like cavalry, and I remember I really got into the names of I had like Skylavarius and Ecolindus. I had these really cool long names for these birds and stuff. And it was really cool. But now I can't ever write in that world because he's attached to it. So if I'm going to write something on my own, I really have to do my own thing. That's the one downside of it is, not that he and I have a problem, but you are now bound to continue to collaborate with somebody on that level.
Yeah, well, I got thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I mean, because
Oh,
so it's good to collaborate. I was told a long time ago, and I tend to continue to agree with this. Don't try to collaborate until you've made your own mark. At that point, and then only then collaborate with others that have also made their mark. Because at that point, you have two people who know what they're talking about, coming to an agreement on collaborating, and you're probably going to have a successful relationship. It's like being it's like not marrying the first person you date, you know.
yeah.
Well, and my opinion on that also is there's no reason to be in business with that person, because you can come together with people, because you've got to collaborate with people on different projects. Like, in order to clear different projects, you've got to have different people on them. But collaborating on a particular project is very different from being in business with them.
Yeah.
And so collaborate with people on single projects to get single projects done, but be very careful when you actually go in business with someone or start sharing intellectual property. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the second, if you're trying to publish it, if you're trying to make money on it, you are in business with them, whether you realize it or not, whether you sign the contract or not. There are laws that apply. There are recourse you or they could have to come after you. So that's why that advice was given. If you're going to collaborate, make sure you've made your own mark. You're independently, you have your own independent IP. Make sure that person has also done the same. And it just means that the likelihood that a collaboration will be successful goes up dramatically. It doesn't mean that it's guaranteed to work or that two inexperienced people can't do it, because there's many of those stories. It just means higher probability of success.
Yeah, because then your emotional attachment to the stories is going to be probably a little bit healthier. I feel like it's always like the first world you build is going to be different.
Yeah,
I don't know.
like, this is my world.
I'm completely biased. That's also just what my experience has been. I'm still going to get into that at some point, how my approach to world building has changed. But before I talk about that, well, was there anything else you guys wanted to say on that topic? Because I have
Take it away.
There's a word of advice that I heard. This is not my original idea, but it has been very influential on me and helpful. And I want to share it with people because I know a lot of people fall into this. So as we all know, Tolkien is the guy that has really influenced, especially modern fantasy, but just like, I mean, really just the epic fantasy genre in general. Like, and we often think about him as the standard because he just created that style of world building. But there's something that I think is important to recognize if you are, especially like specifically a fantasy writer. Oh, I guess this really does apply to science fiction too. You're creating a secondary world that doesn't exist, and you want to create that for the story you're telling, right? Something to remember is that he was playing to his own strengths. So he was someone that was already very interested in, say, linguistics. The reason why he went and built these languages was because that was something that he was knowledgeable about and something that he enjoyed and that was very comfortable to him. Or I think about like C.S. Lewis with developing like he was really into like Greek mythology and stuff like that. And so you see that coming into how he built his world. He didn't create these like, complex cultures with their own languages and stuff because that wasn't his thing. But he built a different kind of a world that was playing onto his strengths. And so that is a very liberating thing to recognize that like you don't have to build a world the way Tolkien did. Like, and that was like you do not, there's no law that says I'm building a fantasy world. That means I need to have, set up this way where I have these individual, nation states with histories that have their languages and language trees. You don't have to do all that. If that's something you want to do, or that's not something you feel good at, you can build a world to your strengths and build a story, like the magic system and all, if it has one, or just all of the approaches to, it's not just what the world is like, but the way you approach building a world. There's so many ways to do it, and I think that's really important, and that has helped me a lot of like being like, because I'll just say briefly, like my first world, the one that City Reckoning's built in, very much just me trying to be a Tolkien copycat. Well, not the world itself, but like the way I approached it, it's very much that kind of thing. And then the second world, the one that my screenplay that Doug is about to read and Heath is reading, I had a very completely different approach to world building, where I had a story I wanted to tell. And I was like, okay, what kind of world is this going to be set in? I instead realized like what I was at that moment very interested in and very knowledgeable about happens to be, it was, well, Greek mythology, Norse mythology, and Hindu mythology. I was really like deeply invested in those three, like, you know, centers of stories. And so I ended up building a world based off of that instead. And anyway, just a general thing that I think is really interesting to talk about.
Well, a great example of what you're talking about is the Dark Tower. Stephen King said, I wanted to tell my version of Frodo and the One Ring. And I was like, and you came up with the Dark Tower? That has nothing to do. Like, it's so different and so distinctive that when he said his inspiration, to your point, Brianna, was Lord of the Rings, I was like, this guy just played to his strengths, like you just said, and ended up with this other epic that by the time he's written it, there's really nothing in common with.
And it'll be more original too. It'll be a more original thing when you're playing to your own strengths. Yeah,
totally. There was nothing more fun. I remember when I really got into reading like hardcore, I was reading almost 4 books a month, and there was nothing like picking up the first book of the Dark Tower. It was so archetypal. You know, there's the gunslinger. I mean, he doesn't even have a name. There's the man in black, you know, and he's pursuing them. It's like, that's all you need to know. And you're in this desert like location and there's technology, but it's not like, you know it. Anyway, it just, it makes me appreciate what you're saying, because you are absolutely right. You do not have to emulate Tolkien in terms of his strategy, but you should play to your strengths and go for it.
Your strengths and your interests too, because obviously like you may have something that maybe it isn't a strength, but something you're super interested in. And then you would be motivated to go and research that thing, you know?
Totally.
And then that can become a strength. And so I think that is just a very liberating thing. Like there's no set way to build a world.
There's really not. And most of the stuff I'm going to be talking about, I never want to be boxed into me telling people this is how you do it, because all I have is tips. Like this is what helped me. And these are tips and strategies you can put in a toolbox and use. And if they help you, then I've succeeded at my goal. If they don't help you, then that's fine too. But most of mine are strategy based to help, like I said, like define your story universe. That's to get around the I need to know everything problem. It's good. It's fun, but it's distracting you simultaneously. So you should really focus on the universe within the pages of your story. Focus on that first.
Or within your RPG world book.
Or your RPG world book or your screenplay. Those are the worlds that you're going to have to really understand. It's good to know how it's all connected. It's good to have some understanding there, but you really need to be an expert on to some degree, your setting that you're going to put your characters into. So
maybe one day as a world primer, we should do Disco World. Welcome to role playing in Disco World.
Yeah, I like disco.
So I'll let you guys have notes. I want to let you get to those notes, but I have one question that I think is relevant here, or observation that's relevant here. Lou sent me a bunch of books at one time, and so I was reading a bunch of books that Lou sent me. This is Lou Anders, and that he was an editor when he was at Pyre, and so I was reading some of the books that Lou had edited, and I'm not going to mention exactly which books these are, but there was an instinct here that I read them and I was enjoying them, but and he was like, "What do you think?" And one of my comments was, "There is no world building here," and he said, "No, there's not. The world is whatever the story needs." So, okay, there's a broad sense and a narrow sense here that both Lou and I had an instinct about, because in the broad sense, I mean, of course, there was world building in the book as far as what this fantasy world is, the fantasy world and what's going on. But it might speak to what Brianna is talking about, the difference between how she approached City of Reckoning and how she's approaching Dark Goddess. And that's not because I did not feel this way when I was reading Dark Goddess, that there was no world building. So it may not be exactly the same, but
there is a lot of world building in there, but it is only what I need.
There's not what you need, right? Yeah. But I felt when my comment when I had finished this book was there is no world building in this book, and Lou was also that's exactly right. And the comment was the world is whatever it has to be in order to tell the story.
Well, I think there is a instinct for role playing gamers. Jesus, where you have this whole world that's sitting there for you, and then you have the character that you design, and then you interact. Character, world, we interact, and that's the whole fun of it. We don't know how it's going to play out. So I think writers who come from the gaming background tend to focus real heavy on the broad world. They want the whole world to play in, and then they're going to invent a character and they're going to send this character out on an adventure. I know that's how I started. I would have the world building mentality of a gamer and then the character design of a gamer. And then I would try to write stories where these are all interacting. And that is certainly one strategy. Yeah, however, I think as you progress, you do get more story focused and you become smarter, I think, on some level on what to include. The story is what your story needs it to be. That is a fundamental discipline, I believe, for a writer to adhere to that.
There may be a balancing act there sometimes too, though, because Keith is saying, you're reading this book and you felt
I felt that way.
You could feel. There's a difference between feeling like the world is just being built for this story, and it, you kind of. I feel like. Well, again, it also depends on the goal of the story. Because if your goal is to make someone feel immersed in this other world that they want to be sucked away into, and you want them to be, just happy being within the pages of your novel or happy being glued to a screen. I feel like you want them to feel as if there is more. So it's there is a little bit more there. But it's that law of diminishing returns of you're building enough to give it the feeling that it's a well-rounded world that's interesting, that's fun to be in, but then you're not wasting your time building details that don't contribute to your specific goals. That there's probably some sort of a balancing act there.
So strategy 1 was define your story universe. Strategy number 2 is point of view.
Okay.
So for me, and this helps what you're talking about, start to think about which point of view you're going to look at this world and experience this world from, because that immediately starts to block off a lot of things. If you have a poor person, well, they're not in the palace.
Yeah.
Sorry, they're not there. Or if they are, what the hell are they doing there? Did they break in? If it's a prince, well, they're not gonna have they seen the squalor outside the walls? So right there, your point of view starts to shift you. Again, I think of that flashlight. It shifts that focus on what you're looking at when the rubber meets the road. So if you've defined your story universe and you know your setting, start thinking about a point of view. And you don't have to have just one. In my book, it's one. Everything is through the eyes of Theodora, who becomes a empress. But there are several books, and I love them. Game of Thrones is a great example where you have multiple points of view.
Yeah.
It gets trickier as you expand, and George R.R. Martin does the thing that you're never supposed to do, which is 20 points of view. But he has pulled it off thus far. Yes. But he's running into a problem now deep into his story where it's very difficult to continue all of these. Mm-hmm. But points of view, drop that person in there, figure out who that person is, and start to think about how they're looking at that world. That is another way to box in. Just those two things alone start to box you in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That for writing says the Cthulhu mythos benefited greatly from outside writers adding to it in ways that sometimes do not work together. It's kind of anti-world building. I took a deep dive into the Cthulhu mythos because even what you're talking about with Lovecraft himself, if you try to draw a coherent line through even Lovecraft's own stories, because that's exactly what we're doing. When I was doing Journey to the Tree of Sorrows, we only wanted to reference Lovecraft's own work and not anything else that come after. So we went back to his work specifically, but even his own work is inconsistent. He just has these ideas that he draws from that that he moves together, and there's inconsistent. If you're trying to draw consistency in world building through even his own stories, it's not there.
He wasn't building a world primer book. He just
not.
was telling some stories.
He's in dream space, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's good.
But it's one of those things. I think that even can be okay as long as it isn't like necessary. Sorry, as long as it isn't, taking people out of the world. Like if you're sitting there, like being the hyper fan, you're picking it apart, and you're noticing inconsistencies. Like if it's only those people that are noticing it, it might be okay. Some people will be like, oh, I don't know about that. But I mean, again, I'm going to mention this a lot, that like the law of diminishing returns. I think I'm calling that the right thing. Am I calling that the right thing?
No, you are. Yeah.
Okay.
The amount of time that you're spending on something,
less and less,
right?
You're getting less and less benefit from it.
And it can be like I think it's hard for some creatives to hear this, but I genuinely think it's true. Like you don't have to make. Let me rephrase that. It's not possible to make things that are perfect. It's not possible to make a perfect novel or a perfect world or a perfect piece of art. And so if you can accept that there will be some imperfections and focus on what is most important, it's okay if things like that, fall through the cracks, as long as it isn't taking away from the story for the vast majority of people watching it. Obviously you want to try to avoid those kind of problems, but you don't want to get so caught up in that it's taking away from you being able to like finish something,
Totally.
So yeah, that's
and sometimes the incoherency becomes part of the world building.
Mm-hmm.
You get these kind of like Lovecraft is a perfect example. You just come to expect that things might not be as they seem, or 1 minute it's this, the next minute it's this. Twilight Zone. Sometimes incongruity is part of world building. Memento, Inception. I mean, there are entire. Christopher Nolan loves this principle, but there are ways to world build where you shake things up and make the incongruencies part of the world.
And a really cool aspect of that is point of view, like what you were talking about earlier. Because think about in the real world, like if you ask people, I don't know, about some historical event that's happened, like. Not everyone has all the full details. People have false information. Some people are more educated than other people. And so that can be an interesting way to like that can be a world building aspect of like having different characters that might have false information about their own world. And you could do that on purpose to show like how the different kind of perspectives that might exist as well.
100%. And I'll tell you, point of view is very critical.
Mm-hmm.
I get away with a ton of details in my stories because of the point of view and because of something else I'll get to. Maybe I can't even get to it. I'll get to it in a second. Functionality. If you are trying to draw a contrast, like in the book I'm writing right now, I'm specifically drawing a major contrast between the ultra wealthy and the ruling class and the ultra poor. And because I know I'm trying to do this, while I'm building out the decadence inside the palace, so the spectacle, the amazing, I'm getting away with a ton of detail because even as I'm writing, there's a sense that you're being set up for something.
Yeah,
so people will stick with you because the point of view anchors me. It's Theodora's point of view. She's witnessing all this stuff and I'm building. And I feel like I still have the reader because in a little bit, we're going to move out and we're going to go into the city and we're going to see where she came from again, which she's almost forgotten. And now we have this contrast and you have these two things going on. It's compelling to a reader to experience both on a contrast like that. So point of view, I can't stress it enough in your story universe. And I didn't know if you wanted to say anything else because I have my third thought.
I do want to hear your third thought. I want to say briefly, I play with that in City of Reckoning too, because there is a similar thing with like class and how different people, it's actually point of view is a pretty important part of that because it is a story that has multiple, I'm trying to remember how many it is now. It's been a while since I wrote. I think it's 4. I think it's actually 4 point of views, which is a lot. But they all are seeing this war and the consequences from very different perspectives.
Awesome.
And so being able to resolve that is messy. It's not easy. And they disagree with each other, And so that is a fun thing to play with. And so that also can justify, like you were saying, like, okay, well, now I do need to know what it's like to be at this stratum of society, or what it's like to be here. Like, yeah.
Well, and I'm sure you've experienced this. You get lost in the point of view in your writing. You get, you're doing a good job of writing sometimes when you become enamored with this character and that point of view and the way they see that world, and that the world is fascinating. And, these are people that you're writing about. Characters are people. They are fascinated by things. They are disillusioned by things. And it's really fun as a writer to play with disillusionment. What does the character think's happening that's not? Are they being misled, like Heroine's Labyrinth scenarios? Is there a cult of deception, or are they experiencing like Tolkien was good at, the thrill of experiencing an exotic world that all had names and places in various layers of history? This was once the great watchtower of Amansul. There's a history. There's a character there on that watchtower, even though it's an inanimate object. So, it's fun as a writer to play with that. But that point of view will help you out in a big way if you like world building.
Yeah, there can be a sort of a delight in that, and like sometimes that is like part of your purpose of building world. Again, you need to know why you're building the world the way you are. But that can be, depending on what kind of story you're telling, like if it's a very adventure-y kind of a world story, right, in particular, that like there is that like delight of discovery, of finding new places, that if that fits the perspective of your character, that can justify having more details, because that may be part of the fun that the readers enjoy too. Is like,
yes,
to explore. It's that primal human desire to explore. Sometimes, sometimes you want to put that in your story. Sometimes,
well, totally. So I do think there's the third layer. So you've got your world, you've got your point of view, and like we just said, we can kind of understand that the funness of just exploring the point of view. Another thing to help box me in is you have the universe, and I have what I call the universal question. And this starts to narrow down the focus of your point of view. So for example, Raiders of the Lost Ark, the universe, it's South America, it's Nepal, blah, 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 whatever. What's the universal question? And I've analyzed that film, and the universal question is, what do we do with artifacts that are buried that no longer have any owners? And that universal question is very important to the story and to the point of view of the lead character and to the villains. And the reason the universal question is so important is because you get 2 or more answers to the question. In Raiders of the Lost Ark, one of the answers is take it for your own satisfaction, for your own glorification, for your own power, for your own wealth and fortune. The other answer is take it and put it in a museum so people can learn from it and learn about the culture. Indiana Jones is famous for saying that belongs in a museum. Whereas Belloc is about, taking it. Der Fuhrer, who Belloc works for, he wants Germany to lead his armies and everything. So that's the universal question. And how that universal question is answered begins to build out the 2 groups, mainly 2, but you can have more, groups of people that are going to be responding to this universal question. And that's important too, because it will begin to steer your point of view character in one of these 2 camps, which will then also color them. Like Luke, he's pro-rebellion pretty early on. You know about the Empire and the rebellion? So that universal question is a big one. What is at stake in your world? Brianna, in your world, it sounds like there's a war going on, and it sounds like there's different takes about what this war means and what we should do about it. And that's going to start directing your character in one direction or another. So the universal question, story universe, point of view, universal question, which splits off. And now it'll help direct your character. And Heath and I talk about this all the time, develops conflict. These 2 are going to oppose each other naturally. They can't always coexist. So which side your lead character takes, and it's one of 2 or more, begins to develop the conflict of your story. So that just those 3 things really help me structure out a story And they're all fascinating. The world's fascinating. The point of view person is fascinating. The conflict, the universal question, it's fascinating how different people answer that question. Mm-hmm. So, on one side you have Belloc and people that act like him and behave like him because of his answer to the universal question. And then on the other side, you have people like Indiana Jones and the university and Marcus Brody because they've answered it a different way. So they're going to behave in a different way.
And there's also the government, U.S. government, which has
so there's always third and fourth
open
players.
ending.
Yeah, like in Star Wars, you have the Empire and the Rebellion, but you have the bounty hunters. They're kind of the nefarious, neutral, middle ground. But they tend to work for one side or the other. But I'm just saying, like, as far as focusing you as a writer or as a game player or as a screenwriter, even these are things that have helped focus me. I don't know if you know, I have ADD. So I have attention deficit. So I've had to develop very strict rules for myself to help focus me. And because I have ADD, I wrote them all down. So I have all these rules written down.
Nice.
Well, I know that you have some notes that you can bring up on screen, Doug, and I actually think it would be good if you would do that. But I do have a comment before you do that. And you may too, Brianna. You may too. But I wanted to comment. I wanted to go back and comment on the in-universe texts because this has become a favorite strategy of mine. And I was using this before we started Journey to the Tree of Sorrows, but we especially really used it when we were doing Journey to the Tree of Sorrows, which is the Lovecraftian universe that I was doing with David LaRocca. And we basically said that all of the information that you know about this world will come through in-universe texts. So almost, in the end, it probably wasn't 100%, but almost everything that you knew about that world was written as an in-universe text. And I love this technique for exploring a world. And of course, there's a Journey to the Tree of Sorrows YouTube channel, which I no longer run. I don't have any association with, but my writing is on that. And so if you go and you look up something on the Elder Sign or the Yellow Sign or the Seal of Yog-Sothoth, it's not me, the writer, or David, the creator of the world, telling you something about this. It was always some person in the universe
with
telling you
and a bias,
right? Telling you what it was, and at the end of every passage, it told you where it was and what book it came from. So, one, it's a great way to keep from writing yourself in the corner, because if you want to say, "Hey, it's this," be like, I just don't want to write myself in a corner by declaring that this is this way, this early in the development of this world. Well, you've got this person with this perspective who says it this way, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. And that means that you can write alternate perspectives on the same thing later if you're doing in-universe text. And that was going, I hope that eventually that book is published, because it was designed for RPGs, for role-playing. And there were so many in-universe texts. Everything was told to you, like not everything, 90%. 90% of the thing was told to you as in-universe texts.
But keep in mind that is a historian-centric, literacy-centric perspective. We like, I love books. Like, but even writing Theodora, I was like, she's illiterate. I had to deal with that. And I had to deal with the fact that she had to learn how to write. So people who are illiterate, it's all oral. They hear about it. It's hearsay. It's gossip. It's the local expert tells them their mother or their father. So a lot of it is experienced and verbal, and cultural. But I know that doesn't disqualify what you're saying, by the way.
And I think that my point would also cover that, because I think what you're talking about is, let's say we have an only oral society. I think that I could write a passage that was like a Viking skald telling you something. So we're in universe, and this is a Viking skald speaking, and this is what, yes, it's written down, and he wouldn't have written it down, but as related by the skald, whatever, at the campfire of this king in this year. And that's what he said.
He's the influencer.
So, yeah, I mean, it's written down, and it wouldn't have actually been written down, but that's still giving you something from his perspective, which I'm contrasting with telling you in an encyclopedic and authoritative way, as me, the creator of the world, this is something. This is a fact of the world.
There's a common, you find this in a lot of fantasy novels, and it's a trope that I like. I think you can it's easy to do it poorly too. But you know, where you have like the beginning of a chapter or beginning of a section, and it gives you a little like an in-universe text that tells you about something related to the world. I'm a big fan of doing that. The only problem is that you do have to make sure that what you're putting is not just you showing off and not just being like, well, look at me, I'm a fantasy writer with all this information. Like it has to be actually interesting and relevant to the story that you're telling.
Readers will spot it right away.
Or they'll just skip it because they don't care. But a great example, I'm trying to remember the name. It's either Beneath the Pendulum Sun or Beyond. I think it's Beneath the Pendulum Sun is the name of this book, by someone that I interviewed when I was doing a podcast.
Oh.
Back in the day. Great book. It's like a gothic horror fantasy kind of a thing, where during the age of like it's historical, so like during the age of when people were like going out and exploring, when colonization,
Age of exploration.
the age of exploration, they discovered a land of Fae. So it's an alternative history with and there's a land of the Fae, and someone's going because her brother went there as missionary and he hasn't been heard from since, and she's going to go find him. It's a fantastic book, not what you expect. Horrifying twist. It's great.
Sounds awesome.
It's a great book, but I love the way that book handles it, because usually I'm like, if you're going to put a little in-universe text, I don't want it to be every single chapter. Like I actually have that in City of Reckoning. I have in-universe stories and myths, but they're like by each section. Because I'm like, I don't want to overdo that. But that book, it has them, and they're just like a paragraph or two, and they're at the beginning of each chapter. But the thing is that the information in those little in-universe texts are super important for you to understand what's actually going on in the story. And there's a revelation, a horrifying thing that you start to understand before the characters do, because you're piecing these things together. So it's like a
built-in puzzle.
Yes, there's a built-in puzzle because it's,
That's
Gothic
awesome.
horror type story. So, you're in a classic Gothic house out in this land of the Fae. I really want to reread that book. That's a book that I would, someone else's story that I would be willing to direct as a director. So when I was reading it, I was like imagining it as a movie. I was like, Anyway.
That sounds pretty cool. That's a great
terrible.
premise.
It's a great book. But anyway, there's a personal taste element to that as well. But I do think that is in the novel format, something that you can do well. But you just have to be aware that if it's not interesting or it doesn't feel relevant, readers are going to skip it. So make sure you earn their attention, and you don't squander it. Like you don't be like, okay, now next time not to pay attention to the story.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, and I'm sure you guys have all been there too, where you're reading someone else's work and they're going on and on, and you're like, oh man, I know why they're doing it. They want to include all this, but I don't see how it's relevant to the scene, And the worst thing I hate, one of the things I hate doing is like being like, all this, you can just cut it out, because I know that's the one thing that they like centered the scene around, was the part I want them to cut out. But you're right, you have to earn it. I think that was the way you said that was perfect.
Yeah.
Let's look at a couple comments. Sable says Matt Colville of MCDM says that world building and writing isn't actually teaching you to write. It's like writing a technical manual. An RPG source book is not a story. I completely agree. He says if you want to write a story, you have to write an actual story.
That's what I mean by rubber meeting the road. That's why I have these rules to help bring you into if you want to write fiction, you're going to have to be in a position to write fiction. And sometimes world building is like encyclopedic. And it does not, and it's even a different part of your brain. It's creative, but it's like nonfiction. And I'm telling you, it is not easy to just cross over and start writing fiction. So that's why I developed some of these distinctions to help, almost like kingdom, phylum, class, or slowly build you into something more specific, because that's where the magic is. That's where you're going to hook a reader in fiction.
Yeah, he says anyone can do that style of writing. Well, maybe, but it's easier. It's much easier than anyone cannot write a story. We've been talking a bunch about that. So I agree with that. I completely agree with that sentiment. But that's why I said that I've started completely separating those things in my mind.
Why
am I writing an RPG book, or am I writing the world?
There's something I want to do at one point. This is one of those stories that I haven't written yet, but it's in the same universe as the City of Reckoning, where I want to have this religious war that happens, and you have characters that are on different sides of it. But I want to have like in-universe texts that are like the religious texts from both sides, and how they critique each other's theology, and like why to show like what that conflict is based in. Like that's like a fun thing I want to explore one day. Like that would be a fun usage of that trope of like, you know, I can't just put this in the actual story, but it is relevant. Like, you know, it's relevant to read that, and it's interesting. It's building the you know, the tension that it's giving you more context about the sort of the environment, the cultural environment that these characters are in as it relates to the conflict.
Well, and sometimes it's really fun to get that out through dialogue.
Yes. That'll be the best spot for it, but
well, but it doesn't always work out. I'm with you. There are times where I, as the author or as the person telling the story, you just tell, you're like, hey, and that's where this was, and that's where this was. So sometimes it just comes out through narration. But yeah, preferably through dialogue. I have in the Theodora book, there's like extinct Christian religions, and they're vital to understanding the social conflict of the time. And I cannot tell you how many times I'm like, I wish I could skip this because it's so archaic and so not interesting, but you have to use it. So I've found some ways through dialogue where characters are literally like, why are these two people fighting? And someone explains it to them. And you know, I'm like, okay, we're just giving, someone just said drip feed the reader. Yeah. Sometimes you don't do it all at once. You just give a little clue about what's going on. And then in another chapter, a little clue. I found that piecemeal system is a good way to build out something goofy or complex over time. By the end of the book, your reader should be like, oh yeah, I totally get this. That's like good. Because it's amazing that you get that, because that's very complex theological doctrine that existed back then, you know? So dialogue is usually a beautiful little secret.
BGD brings up a point here, which crossed my mind as well as we were going in the conversation, but we didn't address, but I think it's important to address. BGD says, I challenge the dichotomy. Many RPG hobbyists prefer to begin their world building with a single location and a few truths about the world in which it exists. Wait, does he go? Allowing for additional details in the eventual big picture evolving dynamically during play. And we've talked about in the morning grind. We've talked about that. Yes. So there's bottom up world building and there's top down world building. And so it's not necessarily the case that even if you're doing something for an RPG that it has to be very top down and start with the outlines of the continents of the world. You can start with, well, gee, these characters are just in this particular town.
And BGD is totally right. I call it, and this is just me, big production gaming and low budget gaming. And all that means is sometimes you do exactly what he's talking about, where instead of me doing all of this world building and doing all of this research, we just do a low budget production where we start with characters in a single setting and then they just move outward and we figure it out as we go. And there's a total brilliance and charm to that as well. So I will never say that there's one way to do anything. In fact, every rule I've ever heard has been broken in a way that turns into a masterpiece. Right. So there is no one way. These are just strategies that helped me zoom in and solve certain problems as a writer that I was struggling with. But you're totally right. You could do almost no world building and explore the world kind of off the cuff as you go. And then kind of you start to generate a lore and a culture and a world that kind of takes shape as you explore it. So total room for that.
Yes. Sable Phoenix says unreliable narrators are super valuable. Yes. And hey, Extra J, hello. Good to see you.
Hi.
Yeah, unreliable narrators are great. And sometimes they're the lure of the story. Have you ever read A Confederacy of Dunces?
I have not.
This book was recommended to me, and it wasn't the kind of book I would normally read, but it was so compelling. It's about a guy that is so deranged and detached from reality. You have to read it. I strongly recommend it. It's got one of the most incredible, unreliable narrators ever. A Confederacy of Dunces. It's such a bizarre book. And there are passages and pages that are just, because the guy's semi-coherent, you can't get enough. You just can't get enough of this bizarre line of logic that this guy will nosedive into. It's amazing.
I'm trying to look. There's been a lot going on in the chat, and I'm trying to catch up. So if I don't get if I scroll past your comment, I'm sorry. I'm trying to look for things that I know we've gone by some of things that and being said in the chat. So we want to catch up on like what BGD said, which was a fantastic point. But there's a lot. Gnosticism.
I was talking about extinct religions and everything. And Gnosticism was like monophysitism. So the big discussion at the time, I'll be brief, was what is the nature of Christ? Like, we don't even think about it today, but back then they're like, well, if one of the first commandments is thou shalt have no other God, then how does this second Jesus fit into the Father? That's two gods. That's a problem. And then some people were like,
"Oh, well, about this history."
What's that?
I said I just read a book about this history called "How Did Jesus Become God?" Anyway.
So it's actually a totally compelling debate that we don't even have today. We have the Nicene Creed, the Holy Trinity solved. It wasn't solved back then, and people were killing each other over this. People were being prosecuted over which answer you espoused. And there were riots in the streets over this, and they were ousting emperors if they embodied or endorsed the wrong belief system. So, and all of this is very distracting sometimes from the story that I want to tell. So instead of trying to just say it, I'll just drop little hints about it and keep the reader just kind of like, oh, okay, I think I get it. I think, oh, it makes more sense now in chapter 6. Oh, yeah, now I get it. Just slowly but surely kind of building it out, because trying to explain it all in one sitting or one chapter,
it's
like it's toxic. Yeah, it kills the story.
Sable brings up the microscope RPG is the ultimate in practice of start small and build big, but it does try to start with the big picture and drilling down to the details. Have you ever heard of this, the microscoped RPG? We covered this on the Morning Grind.
I have not.
Okay, I think this needs to be a dinner and a board game. And I think you and Doug, you and Brianna should join this, because it is a game that is built around world building. During the game, over the course of like 3 hours, you collaboratively build a world.
That sounds
cool.
So that has got Brianna and I have been talking about how we're going to get together and start like systematizing, creating dinner and board games, and also other people on Table Talk. But that one in the next like 10 episodes that we need to do. We need to do that, and it needs to be the three of us. And over the course of like a 3-hour game, we need to collaboratively build a new world. And it's a fantastic system.
Oh, I'd totally be down for that.
Yeah, that needs to be one.
Yeah, so like, and I think I'm just like you guys. There's two versions of me in world building. There's the off the cuff, intuitive, feel around, spontaneous creativity, and then there's the intellectual sculpting of the broad picture. So I could do both, and I love both.
What about the cosmology of Brianna? Probably has a comment on this. What is about the cosmology of the setting? Because you got this in Dark Gods being important
and in world. Neurasia as well.
Neurasia as well.
So what about the cosmology of the setting being important to the foundations of how things in the setting work? Yeah, that is so fun. And that is one of my favorite things personally, also just because that's something that, going back to your strengths and interests, like I love mythology and I love, cosmology in general. So it's really fun to play with. And like, thinking about, again, it depends on what kind of story you're telling, but let's say you're building, a secondary science fiction or fantasy world. Thinking about, okay, what is this on the biggest scale is very fun to play with. Like, is this a planet? Is this a moon? Is this like, what is it orbiting? What is orbiting it? So what kind of sky are you going to have? That is very fun to think about, because there's literally so many options. If you're thinking about that, like there's so many, like you don't have to do something that you've seen before. Like there's so many ways you could play with that. And then questions of like, okay. And then, if it's fantasy, like, okay, did they evolve? Were they created by gods? Did they evolve, but they believe they were created by gods? What are these gods like? What do the people in the world believe about their origins? And then what are their origins? And do you find out which one it is, or if it's some of both, or do they have different stories? Like, all of that is very fun to explore. And if you're trying to create something that is, really immersive, like that can add to the level of like, making it feel more built out, and also making it something interesting, a world that you want to return to because it's something, something different. But yeah, that like there's literally so many options for what kind of physical world it is. Of course, there are fantasy writers out there that do really weird, bizarre things like, oh, this isn't even a normal planet. Like what is it in the Song of Ice and Fire? It's like a inverted thing, like it's not like a planet. Like I can't remember how it works, but isn't it? It's like you're on the inside. Like, I think the world's curves like this, and you're like,
George R.R. Martin.
I think so. Maybe am I thinking of a different fantasy universe? I want to say
it is
ringing
a bell, but that doesn't.
No, it is because I remember in they don't really tell you about it that much. But
I think it's round in A Song of Ice and Fire. There are other ones because it's Song of Ice and Fire. Westeros is round but larger than our own.
But it's round. But is it round like this or round? Because I wonder, maybe I'm thinking something else. But people have done all sorts of, and especially when it's fantasy, it doesn't actually have to technically physically work. It just has to be something that you can buy, that you can suspend your disbelief. I think people did, some mega fans of Westeros did the math like to figure out, because it's like winter can come at any point, and they figured out like a whole cosmology of like, they were trying to figure out like how would this system work that was orbiting, and how would that work, and they found it was impossible. You couldn't have the system where just winter could randomly come at any point. But it doesn't matter. That's the rule of this.
Yeah, those guys will not win the day.
Yeah, but and so it's just like, that's not the point. The point is to create an experience to enhance your storytelling.
Right.
So let's say hello to JDM. Hello. Good to see you. Welcome.
What's happening?
I've been looking through comments. There's a lot going on in the comments, so I'm not gonna be able to bring up everyone.
Oh wow.
That's cool. I'm glad they're having fun in the comments.
Well, I'm glad BGD you're still here, because we got to your comment. I'm glad you saw. But yeah, BGD says that was a great grind on Microscope. I'm looking forward to talking to organizing a dinner and a board game and playing that game. That would be fantastic.
Like I said, world building, there's something core creative about it.
Yeah.
So that's why I think books on world building topics are always going to be compelling, because, I mean, you're in there, you're going in, you're building this thing out, and as you think of it, it becomes more and more real to you. God, I used to draw pictures. Man, I would get lost in world building at times. Like I remember having all these different cultures, and I would sketch them out. I remember I had this like polar bear race of people, and they would wear orca hides on their back like cloaks, and I would draw these things out, and it was so fun to do. So yeah, it's just so fun, man, like to get lost in these worlds.
I don't know anything about that. The Artifaxian channel, I'm looking.
I've heard of that. I want to say I'm subscribed to that one, but I don't think I watched the videos. Okay. But that sounds really familiar.
I just subscribed, so I will check that out. I don't know anything about it, but I will check that out. Okay, so we've got notes. Doug, I'm not sure what you said you got 4 points.
So I can show you.
Do you want to bring that up on the channel? Because I'm not sure what all those were. Do you want to?
So yeah, let me. And these are old notes. So bear with me. I'm sharing them. Hold on, it's not showing me here. Okay, I think this is it. Template, no, this is it. Okay, so this was my effort to use. Yeah, I don't even know if you can see it, but
okay, we're going to zoom in.
Yeah, hold on, I'll get that. I didn't know how it was going to come up.
Well, we have notes here on this show. This is the deep dive. Here's some notes.
Right, totally. So
what is it that we're looking at right here?
What are we?
So this was my effort to build out a structure to the world that was functional. And it helped me choose my settings, and it helped me choose my characters, and it did so in a way that always let me stay focused on the conflict. So
can you make that wider on your screen?
I don't.
Yeah, let me.
It's so like.
Yeah, let me see if I can mess with this for a second.
I think there is an issue with his actual screen, his monitor.
Yeah, I have a very big upright screen. Here, I could put it on this screen and then reshare it.
Well, okay. That's better. That shows better for us.
Okay, that does. Okay. I can't see it though.
Good.
Here, I'll just pretend I'm watching. So, yeah, so this was my story universe, the East Roman Empire in the 6th century. That was the essential story universe. And the universal question was the role of women in society. And that was a big question because she wanted to do one thing and society had another plan for her. And then let me see how I set it up. And again, this was designed to help me stay focused. So yeah, the universal question. Okay, yeah, so the dark nature. This was the thing. So there. Whoops. The idea was the universal question is the role of women in society, right? What are the answers to this question? Society says mother, prostitute. There's seamstress. Society has a very narrow range of answers to that. And Theodora, obviously, especially as a younger woman, didn't know all of these answers were already pre-picked. She had other ideas of her own. So I call it the dark nature. The dark nature is always going to be one of the answers to this question. So the dark nature for the role of women in society was prostitution, which she was. She was a prostitute. So carnality was the answer. So what I did was I took carnality and broke it down into physical spaces in the society. So
you're letting theme drive.
Right. So it just helped me stay focused. That's what this did for me. So what part of human nature must be overcome? The dark nature propagates. The person must choose to accept or ignore. So it's the idea of being disciplined to do it or not. It has many human expressions. The negative culture is usually diverse, pervasive, seductive, and destructive. The dark nature. So anyway, it's something, it can be propagated was kind of the idea. And this propagation becomes enculturated. So the question is, at that point is, if that's the dark nature to the universal question, the role of women in society, well, carnality, objects of sexuality, beings of sexuality, that's one answer to this question, right? So carnality, I decided, was going to be one of the themes that I was just going to have to grapple with through the course of this story. So the next question was, who are the dark followers? Who are the people that follow? And notice I'm not saying evil necessarily, but the dark and the light.
The way I like to use that word.
well, so it can often turn into evil when done at such a scale or even a small scale that harms somebody individually. But so who are the dark followers? Who agrees that carnality is a good role for women? Well, pimps, brothel keepers, maybe certain madams that run some of these things, people who train the women to then sell them off into these. So there's a whole, industrial complex there of people who are invested in carnality as the answer to this universal question. And this becomes, again, enculturated. So then my next question was, what are the principles these people believe in order to do this? Well, they would believe this is just the way the world works. You can make money off of it. That there's certain principles that would guide them in order to sustain this culture. And then, of course, when you have a lot of people who agree on this answer, carnality is a good role for women, it creates its own culture, its own, what I call the dark society. And the dark society is the cultural places. Let me see. Yeah, some of this is, I forgot how I answered it, but the dark society is the world that builds around these ideas. So these are all people who agree, they're going to cooperate on some level. And then, so this is what helped me with my settings. What I call the dark temples? It means the people who have answered the universal question, what's the role of women in society? One answer is carnality. This is the darker answer. You have the people who follow this answer. You have the society that forms around the people who agree on this answer, and the dark temples. This is important because it helps you choose your settings. I wrote down, what are the physical spaces where the dark society operates, where the answer to the universal question plays out? And the answers were things like brothels, bathhouses, what I gave the koitona, which is like the place where girls are trained. They're taken as young girls and they're trained in these places, and then they are sold off into the brothels. Theaters, because back then actresses and prostitutes were one and the same. They were not different. So a woman would perform on stage, and then immediately after, guys would be like, I want her. They pay, and then she sleeps with them. The fornaces, which are the rooms that are rented for the women to sleep in. Harlot's Row, which is the street that all this takes place. So pretty soon I knew where my settings were going to be based on those dark temples. The physical spaces in the story universe where the dark society operates, the actual physical spaces. And then you have what I call dark champions. These are the people who have mastered this world. These are your social apex characters that are really good at this. And then, of course, the victims. There is a destructive element to the dark society, to the dark temples, and there are going to be victims to it. And it's good to know who those people are, because as you're writing, these are going to be some of your characters. And some of these victims are going to accept the dark society as a reality. And they're going to codify and internalize it on their own, and they're going to perpetuate. They're going to help perpetuate it. They might even, even though they're a victim, they might even resist your lead character if they try to oppose this dark society. So it creates a world where conflict will exist, and it helps you kind of narrow down the themes and structures and settings for your story universe by following this format. And then by nature, you have the opposite answer. Who are the enlightened few? Who has another answer to the role of women in society? Is there any other answer? Is there a good answer to this? Well, you might say like motherhood or whatever. Theodora's answer is a little bit more in line with what modern people might think, which is a woman should be free to do whatever she wants. So she has this idea, but there's going to be some other people in this world who agree with her. That's what makes them the enlightened few. Who are those people? Where do they get together? What are their principles? What's their value system? It's not the same as the dark principles. Secondly, what is their vision of the world? What should the world look like? And then the sanctuaries. This is the opposite of the dark temples. This is where people who disagree, who have their own answer to this universal question, where are the places that they meet at? Where do they go? What are the buildings that they meet at? And who, the prime hero or heroine, who's the person that has mastered this alternative idea? So anyway, this was one structure that helped me develop themes, settings, characters. The victims become the characters, the enlightened few become the characters, and pretty soon it becomes a functional world with a functional central problem, and it keeps you focused as a writer, because even if you're going to tell this side story, well, put it in a bathhouse. And guess what happens when you put it in a bathhouse? Members of the dark society are there. What are they talking about? Just them talking is world building. Just this setting is world building. All of it starts to feed back into itself. And I think that helped me a lot. Now, I would also change this a little bit. I did come up with another difference in terms of insurgent good versus insurgent evil, in which Lord of the Rings is a case of insurgent evil. The world is essentially good, but in decay or in decline, and evil has to kind of sneak in and begin to set up. Whereas Star Wars, A New Hope, is insurgent good. The Galactic Empire is everywhere, and the rebels are kind of working their way up to fight them. So
that's a really cool concept.
Yeah, so just that concept can help you think about, where are your characters? Are they with the insurgent good, or are they dealing with an insurgent evil that's creeping into the world slowly but surely? In my world with Theodora, she was definitely part of the enlightened few. It was an insurgent good. The world had no place, no concern with her view of the role of women for society. There was no path forward for her. And so she had to create one herself. And hopefully I succeeded at showing how she could have done that in a world where there was where it was all dead ends, and then follow up on it. And what's interesting, and then I'll shut the heck up. In the second book, carnality is not the issue. It becomes violence, violence in which is part of book one, but a small theme. It becomes a central theme in book two. So all of my answers to these questions are totally different in terms of violence, individual, like where you have a society that's constantly rioting against itself. So anyway, that's one branchway that will help you start to world build for fiction, depending on how much you like to understand your world or how much functionality you want to build into it early on.
And that's like a theme-driven thing, which I really like that approach of you're saying, okay, what is it that I need to establish in this world? Well, what is the story about? Starting there. Here's what the story is that I'm telling. What is the story about? What are the central themes of the story? And then what are the locations that can then help tell that story? Like that's pretty cool. Because I'm surprised we've been talking for an hour and 45 minutes and none of us has said the phrase yet. Setting as a character. I'm surprised no one has said that yet. It's such a cliche, but it's so true because like that is your setting is an important character, and I guess in world building sometimes it's multiple characters, multiple settings, multiple almost like the settings have a point of view in a sense, but they can be so important on a theme level.
That's right.
I love that. Yeah.
Well, what's important, what helps me with this is the theme is an accident of it's a byproduct. I'm not picking the theme. I didn't sit here and say, oh, what I'm going to do is tell a story about carnality at all. In fact, I landed on this square, and as I built it out and I realized that all these settings and places were going to take place in these areas, setting as character becomes huge, because this is why I got away with so much detail in my story, because I understood what I was trying to do. So I'm not just in a brothel. I'm in one of the dark sanctuaries. Mm-hmm. What's it like in here? Who's there? What are they talking about? All of it feeds into each other. So I was able to say so much detail that I couldn't get away with when I was writing medieval fantasy before, because I didn't really know the theme. Like it was just self-indulgent details.
Yeah, self-indulgent details are great.
Totally. It was totally self-indulgent. Yes. Now it's like you're writing a poem about this terrible thing in this terrible place. And you can tell a ton of details because it's all feeding into something that absolutely is going to affect your lead character, because she's opposed to this, whether she knows it or not.
That leads so well into the other thing that I wanted to talk about. Is anyone, do you have anything else to say on that, Heath, first?
I do have something in a segue to you, because I was going to say that I think it's fantastically interesting, Doug. And I think that it speaks to my original hesitation on having a talk on this subject, just world building, because it's so broad. What you have done, I haven't seen before, because you're talking about world building strictly in terms of what do you need in order to facilitate story. Mm-hmm. And I think that's very, very interesting. I thought that was really interesting. I want to contrast that in 30 seconds, and then I'll turn it over to Brianna to someone else who I really want to have on this channel. Do you know this, Doug? Midgard? This is the Midgard campaign setting.
That sounds familiar, Midgard.
Yeah, it's a fantastic campaign setting. This is done by Kobold Press. Wolfgang Bauer runs Kobold Press, and he's also leads this. I'd really love to have Wolfgang Bauer on the channel. So they do fantastic world building, and this is an RPG campaign setting. But I've listened to him talk about what do you have to have in order to do world building, and of course he's talking about it from a very successful RPG publishing company. Mm-hmm. And I used his structure for my Tales of Rabavania world primer. And like he said, if you want to build a world, you need three things. Now he's not talking about story, but this is the great division between what you said and what he's talking about for different purposes of the world. Mm-hmm. He said, listen, if you want to build a world and you want to write it, and I'm paraphrasing, but this is basically his 3 points, is that you need to give who the characters are going to be playing, who your players, who the players at the table are going to be playing. Who are the characters that they're going to be playing, and how and why are they cool? Why would you want to play this type of character?
Why are they cool? An important detail of character design.
Why do you want to play this type of character that's new in this world? Whether it's a character class or a new race or whatever it is. Like he says, first, one of the things you got to have in your world is who your players are going to be as their players and why are they cool. And then he said you got to have locations for them to go adventure and why are they cool. Locations to adventure. And then he says, then you got to talk about magic and why the magic, what the magic system is in your world and why it's different from other things and why it's cool. So his world building, your pillars, this would be a fantastic subject of the book, right? You're talking about your pillars were all designed to support a story structure. Wolfgangs were all about how to support an RPG.
Yeah.
And I almost don't even think that they're mutually exclusive. You could use some of these things and I have, to support an adventure. It just helps you kind of narrow down if you're the DM, sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on who's playing with you. But sometimes it helps to narrow down the conflict, to orient the players in one direction. Because I have done pure open world, and man, that can get real. You can get caught in a ditch where no one knows what they're doing and everyone's going in different directions. So having some structure sometimes and orienting the role-playing characters toward a certain conflict can still sometimes help. However, again, there's no one authority to this. So, other people are going to have other strategies that are probably going to be phenomenal. Let
me just do a couple of comments, and I'll send to you, Brianna.
Yeah.
Multiverse DM says the clinical term for world building is maladaptive daydreaming.
Maladaptive daydreaming is basically what I do.
That's what I do most of the day too.
Most of the day when I'm supposed to be driving and focusing on other things.
And is it a coincidence that we're all here together?
And yes, and here we are together. This has been a particularly dark day in the Geekverse. Yeah, I know.
I know there's so much dark discussion. I was laughing a little bit earlier to myself on that because I like to make fun of my own.
James says, "Good Lord, Doug, can you publish this? I'd pay money for it." So here. So that may be a new thing.
That'd be. I would love to put all these are old notes. I would love to put them down, and I was just looking at them today while talking about them. I think I would rewrite them entirely, but with the same ideas. That it seems like it was very good versus evil the way I first set it up, and I think I would tone that down a little bit and just show, because the idea is conflict. My point is that there's one form of conflict that people are doing that's a little bit more destructive than the other. I think at the end of the day, whether you take morals out, the idea of good and evil out, you still have that, and I think that still forms a theme.
Sable Phoenix says that could be a great title right there. Your setting as a character, thematic world building.
And here's a thought that just occurred to me because
I like it.
I'm a big fan of I've mentioned this before, John Truby, his 4 quadrants for developing characters, which I think we've discussed this before on the Morning Grind, because this is not it's in other books too. Other books on storytelling talk about this, about having your 4 characters that can kind of explore the different elements of the theme of your story. If your setting is also a character, you can have multiple settings too. Like it can be a binary, it could be a quadrant as well, of like that are showing the different kind of pros and cons of whatever the different answers are to the central question of the story or the central theme. So that could be potentially more complicated and more gray, just depending on what kind of story you're telling.
James actually sent in the channel members that on Heath's Geekverse, on the Heath's Geekverse side, which we're double streamings to at the moment. You can be a member of the channel, and so James has been a member for 7 months over on Geekverse, and so he did send. You get a free super chat every month if you're a member. So he sent in a super chat saying, "Can you publish this, Doug? I'd pay money for it over there."
Awesome.
You got to do it just for him.
Thank you, James.
I got one. That's one sale.
Yay. The only one that's important, right?
And actually, BGD says, "Don't forget to like this stream." Yes, please do. If you are enjoying it, hopefully you're on the new channel or whichever channel you're on. Please do like the channel, like the stream. That helps push it out to people. So I don't know exactly how you do it, but like every month, if you're a channel member, I think there's something that shows up or something that tells you that you get to send in a super chat, and it will tell you like it says with James Bacon, member for 7 months. That was his 7-month super chat. So it's right there. Okay. Are you okay? Right there. Okay. So yeah. So that is a feature of being a member. You get a free super chat every month if you're a member. All right. So Brianna, take it away. That took a while. I'm sorry, but take it away.
No. We're on this is the deep dive table talk. We're not in any rush over here, are we? I've been part of the reason why I was like, can we do world building, is just because I've been mulling over this. We've already talked about a lot of what I'm about to say, but kind of how I have shifted in my approach to world building. I've just been kind of like reflecting on that recently. Because basically I have two major worlds at this point that I have created that have, you know, things that are written about them. And the two of you are about to read both of them. So I'm really curious to know how you react to it. And even if you agree with my own critique of myself, like I'm really curious to know how you guys think, what you guys think about both of those worlds and both of those stories. So, because I basically started, and I wonder if this is a thing that a lot of fantasy writers kind of have to go through. You have to kind of get it out of your system. Because I started off very much mimicking the Tolkien, you know, strategy, because that was what inspired me. Like so many people, like I was super impacted by that world, and it really inspired me. And I was like, you know, I was also very young when I started world building. It's like, I want to make something like that. I want to make this, you know, basically I created a world and then started thinking about stories I could tell there. That was what I did at first, where I spent on, you know, just like, I don't know, like 15 years, like something stupid, like just constantly work, you know, like you're mentioning, like drawing maps hundreds of times. It was one of those, like I drew the map for this one, like hundreds of times before one day I was like, oh, that's the one. And that's the one that ended up being in the book. But like, you know, and it was this ridiculous thing where I had this, I was trying to make the fantasy, you know, Brianna's fantasy story. Like, this is my world. This is the one that, you know, and it was very much like an ego thing. Like, I'm trying to show off. I'm trying to show people, like, look, I can make languages and stuff. Like, I can. There was a big element of that. Of like,
you're tattooed with your language.
I that's right there. Yeah, so I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I have two writing systems I created.
So if you hold your arm near fire, does it glow?
No. But you know, so I was doing that. I was doing a very classic style, even though I was like, I'm not going to do it medieval fantasy. I'm doing it ancient Mediterranean, whatever, you know, but I was still doing like that kind of an approach with histories and blah, 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 blah. So all that can be fun, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. However, here's my cautionary tale. Here's the thing that I kind of wish I had known earlier is, like I was saying earlier, you do not have to create everything and at all. And the cautionary tale aspect of this is that I went so deep, like in just the amount of stuff that I created, that I literally burnt myself out. Like totally. I got to a point, and there's a kind of a sad part of the story too, because part of why I got burnt out was I got very discouraged. I actually lost a lot of my work. I had a tragic house fire that happened a couple years ago. So this language, I actually thought I had lost it. I realized it like in the middle of the night one day. I was like, oh my God. It was the most horrifying. I actually found that I did have some parts of it that have survived. But, you know, I had hundreds of language that I was like words that I was in the middle of digitizing and hadn't finished. And it's just and also like I was just doing all this stuff, and like I was focusing, of course, on what you would encounter in the first book, City of Reckoning. And my plan was I was going to do that same level of really in-depth, just ridiculous amount of work on every time I go to a new part of the world. I'm going to do that. And I just like, I got burnt out, and I literally have been dreading returning to this world. Like, really? I hate to admit it, because I hate to admit that that's true, because people have been waiting on the sequel. I'm finally getting better about it. But I was procrastinating for a while, because I was just like, I don't want to go back and like do that kind of work again, because I'm not interested. Like, and so, and then contrasting that with like, I think part of it was also like needing to, I had to make something that I felt I had a different goal, right? Like my goal with that world was I wanted people to be able to believe that it was a real place they could go to. They're like trying to make it super, I was making it detailed in order to make it realistic. But like what I've come to realize is that you didn't need to make it detailed in order to make it realistic. You just have to have, you know, rules that make sense and have the right amount of detail. So I finally have gotten a bit better about how I feel about that world and returning to it. But it's definitely not Brianna's fantasy world, because I'll contrast that with my other project, which has been Dark Goddess, which is a screenplay, which I will probably be turning into comics as well. It's a very visual story. And that one, I had a complete different approach. I was leaning into my own actual, you know, my own strengths. Like I was saying, it's a myth. It's completely opposite. It's not like trying to make this really realistic feeling thing. It's actually so high fantasy, very mythical, very just intuitive dream space kind of storytelling. And in that case, I did the opposite thing. Instead of adding all these details to like show off, I was being very theme driven, like what you're talking about with Doug, like that, like I have a very central question that I want to explore with this story. Mainly it's that I want to have an archetypal hero to take her to an archetypal villain. What would cause someone to change in that kind of a way? And, you know, asking questions about why do we do evil things, and about, you know, the and how power can corrupt all these things. And so every detail about the world became a way to explore that theme. For example, that motivated me to make it I'm forgetting what the word is. It's a tidally locked planet. So instead of having day-night cycles, you have parts of the world that are in perpetual cold, darkness, parts that are in perpetual sunlight, you know, desert, and then the life is in this like sunset in the middle. And so that like has a thematic role, because you have the dark gods in the story are buried in the dark area, and you have you know, there's a lot of good and evil being like kind of exploring the gray and sort of not the gray, but like the potential for either. And so you have the story taking place in this, you know,
so it's almost like geographically moral or
yeah. So there's geographic elements that are related to the theme, in other words, and in terms of what parts of the story happen in different parts. There's thematic reasons for that. And so I actually removed things. Like I had a lot of ideas for this world that I took out because they weren't contributing to the theme, they weren't contributing to the story. And I was like, I'm not just going to put that in there just for the sake of it. And the result is like a world that I have so much more fun with, that is so much more interesting and to return to. I don't know. It's just like I feel like it's a better world. Like, so I'll be curious to know if you guys feel the same way. But because like I feel like I did a better job creating that world, even though it's like way less. I created that in about a year and a half, and the other one I took 15.
Well, it's lower budget, and in that lower budget, you had more freedom, and it's more fun.
Yeah.
Sometimes
even though the scale of it is actually way bigger, but yeah.
But at a lower budget, you know, you didn't require the same amount of energy expenditure.
Yes.
And like you said, for you to even get back mentally into the other world, you have to climb this ladder that's way too high. And you're like, man, I don't know if I'm up for all this. So yeah, that's the big so yeah, I'm with you. You can do something that's so big budget that you actually build a wall around your own story.
Yes.
So anyway, I sympathize. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I tell that kind of as a cautionary tale, because I don't think it's actually wrong to build a world that way. Like if you like it can be fun. Like it can be fun to make a language if you want to, you know, but if just recognizing that, like, if you go far beyond what you need to do or what you will even enjoy doing, yes, that can actually have a negative. It can feel like a waste of time at the end of it. It's like, I wish I'd spent, instead of spending all that time building this world, I wish I'd been like writing other stories, like making progress, you know.
To be perfectly honest, that's why I designed the system I did for myself, because I have ADD and hyperactive disorder. I mean, I'm not joking. I have both. I can make egregious mistakes because I'm not paying attention, and I'm always working at the same time. So I had to create a system to prevent me from wasting time and energy on things that were really superfluous. And the problem with being ADHD is if I have an idea and I run with it, I will get a ton of distance. I will make it 19 chapters in no time, and it's the wrong direction.
Yes.
So, right. So you become hesitant to go in any direction on the fear that you're going in the wrong direction. So that's why I designed that for me to focus me in on things that I knew would help and keep me focused on one story. That's what this strategy was designed to address.
Yeah. I say this a lot in many different contexts. Be sure you're climbing the right mountain.
Yeah. Be sure. I love that.
Yeah.
Don't get to the top of the mountain and realize it was the wrong one.
You know, I actually literally have physically climbed the wrong mountain once. This is a very funny side story.
You did?
Norway. I was in Norway, and I was by myself, and I was going to climb this mountain. And okay, so hiking in Norway is a quick story. Hiking in Norway is so different than hiking in the United States. Here we have, these strict maps and these trails that you follow, because Americans are dumb, and Americans are very disrespectful to nature. So you have to keep Americans on a path, or else they destroy things. But in Norway, everyone's just like very comfortable with wayfinding. They're very respectful to nature. They don't leave trash. It's just like a cultural difference. And so you try to ask like, oh, how do I get to this area? And they give, oh, here's your map. And it's literally just like,
greenery.
How do I navigate this map? Are you kidding me? So I was going on a trail, and I realized, I was like, this is the wrong trail. I circled back, and then I went all the way up, and I was like, I found it. I kept asking people, am I going the right way till they get to this name of the mountain? I finally get to the top of the mountain, and I'm like so excited. I'm at the top. I'm on top of the world. There's snow around me. I look over, and I see the mountain way over there that I had been meaning to climb. I was like, oh, there it is. Oh, well.
Well, the one good thing is you could take a picture of that mountain from there, which you couldn't see if you were standing on it.
I did. Yeah.
So, in other words, don't do that with your writing.
Don't do that with your writing or anything else if you can help it. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Were you going elsewhere, Brianna, with that?
No, I mean, that was all I wanted. I don't know if you had any thoughts on any of that, Heath, but that was just kind of what I've been thinking about recently.
Well, I was thinking about in terms of Lou's approach, that he was saying, I'm going to build this world that he started several years ago. And he was like, I'm going to build this world to tell stories in it for the rest of my life. Like that's and then it's going to build and grow from there and, develop, because he's going to be working in this world, whether it's his novels or whether it's an anthology of short stories that other people are writing, or whether it's his RPG independently published stuff. Everything's going to be contributing to the development of this world for the rest of his life. But there was something else that was brought up to me. This was before I met Cameron, so I'd be interested. It seems like the thoughts on this would change. But when I was trying to figure out, because I'm kind of doing that with two, Rabivania and Theophany. There are a few other stories that might go on, but Rabivania and Theophany are my big ones as well. But for some reason, I think it was with Lou when we were talking about pitching stuff, he was talking about the value of worlds over a story.
Lou
Oh, I'm sorry, Doug.
Lou said that?
This was Lou. Yeah. Because it was talking about in the context that if you've got any particular story, there's always a reason why you should not go forward with it. This is not, this is a heist story and I need a hero's journey story, or it's a romance and I need a comedy. If you got one particular story that's sitting there, there's always some reason why a committee of executives might say no. But that if you've got a world which can host a variety of different stories, they might say this particular story isn't right, but this world, now hold on, we could do a heist. Oh, hold on, we need a heist. We can do a heist in this.
Having the value of an IP, yeah.
Right. I can bring you a heist. And I have thought about that, because actually that did come up when I was talking with Cameron, because when I had given him the Clovis story, which is basically the mythology of Rabivania. That was this. And he came back and he provided all his notes on it. And he was rather critical of it. And it needed a complete rewrite, in order to go. It needs a complete rewrite. But he said, you don't need this anyway at your stage of your career. You need a hero's journey story. What have you got? Well, Rabivania was big enough that I went, I was like, throwing papers around, whatever. Like, I gotta find something here. But Rabivania, the world itself, was big enough that I went, oh, you need the hero's journey? No, I know exactly the character within this world who goes on exactly that. So if that's what I need to write, I can still develop my world. I can still do that, and all the world building that I'm doing and its constraints, and I can bring you that because I know exactly the character who does that. So even though as Cameron's the role, I guess, an executive there, it was like, this is not working. So I didn't have to abandon Rabivania. because it was big enough to provide multiple stories, and the one that he said that I need to write. And I don't know if there are any comments on that, but I was thinking about that in terms of the value of world and story.
Yeah, I think there's a value to it. Go ahead, Brianna.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that's probably just not contradictory ideas, but potentially just everything is a plus and a minus, right? Like if you have a world that's very tightly built for a story, like that may be a story and a world that works better and people may be interested in it. But then also there's the positive of, like you were saying, if you have a world with multiple stories in it, then there's the positives of, because like with my Dark Goddess thing, I specifically wouldn't, because it's been so tightly built for that story.
Yeah.
I have a lot that I can tell of that. Like I have a trilogy and a prequel trilogy outlined, so I can tell a lot and I could see that being adapted into other things. But beyond that, there's nothing else you can do. So that's a limit. So there's pluses and minuses. I think maybe it just depends on what your goals are,
Well, yeah, I think there's a lot of ways in, and having a broad world where you could tell multiple stories is one strategy. And I think probably one, especially, it feels, I actually heard that we're in the era of the IP. And I've also heard that we're ending that era because people have done such a terrible job with IPs. But that doesn't mean that it's a strategy that won't work. And like you said, Heath, you were able to adapt quickly because your world was big enough to support multiple stories and multiple genres, it sounds like. Because a heist story is a genre of story.
Right. Is a genre, right. And I guess actually going back to one of the things we said earlier when you said that, Brianna, so you've engineered a world to support this story.
Yes.
Which is the opposite of what I felt when I read the other story and felt that there was no world. We told a story and then the world had just been whatever needed to support that story.
Yeah.
I think that I did feel that you built the world to tell this story. That may be the difference. That may be.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It
is built, but it is built specifically for this. Story.
Man, and I just got to say, to me, a vital ingredient is doing it because you love it, not because you think it's going to work or because you think there's an audience. Sometimes, you do it because you love it. And I think that a lot of times your stories end up really good. And I think if you're consistent and you keep working at it, you'll break through at some point. The love of those stories will shine through. I'm writing a Byzantine empress from the 6th century. It was very hard to sell this book because you're asking people to choose your book among all the other options. And it's a world, this is a world that I've built based, to historical setting, but you won't find it in a lot of places. So I don't care. Like, I don't know if there's an audience for it or not. I don't know how easy it is to sell, but I'm just going to keep writing it because I really love writing about this world and this setting and this character. And then you move on, and I think you do the best you can on some level with what you're working on. And then you move to the next project and you love that project. And then you move to, I remember realizing when I finished Faraway Bird, it was like the book came out, everyone bought it, the book. And then it's like, and then people would be like, oh man, what a great book. I loved it. Now what? And that's now what? That's always going to be that's always going to be there. Now what? So just keep working and just keep doing what you love. Whether you start with the world and land on the story or start with the story and build out this huge world, whatever works, as long as you're writing something you really care about. To me, that authenticity is one of the most enduring parts of what someone writes about or creates in general.
I love that. I that reminded me of something I wanted to say earlier, something something you made, some comment you made, Heath, that triggered another aspect of the potential cautionary tale. Oh shoot, I just lost it again. Wait, where'd it go? I lost my train of thought when we were talking about having just one world. Okay, I got it back. That was something that's probably going to be, it depends on who you are as a writer, so he was able to have a world that he like his favorite thing that he wants to write all his stories in, and that works for him. And that's fantastic. I found that when I was trying to do that was a negative because I was trying so hard for, whatever it was, a decade and a half to make this one world my world, to make it everything I loved. And I just have so many interests as a storyteller and so many like just ideas that I was trying to make that world everything. And then that became a negative where it almost becomes, it doesn't have as much of a, it doesn't have as strong and distinct of a like style and personality. We're thinking about character as settings as worlds as the Dark Goddess world that I've created, which is much more distinct. That's because I was letting it be a specific thing. So now, again, I'm not saying this is this is wrong for everyone. It just depends on what kind of storyteller you are. That if you just want to create a world and you're just content to stay there, that can be fantastic. But also recognize that like, if you have a lot of ideas and they're very different from each other and you try to force them all into one world, it can like be a negative. And I think I had that problem with my first world where it just,
it could definitely go either way.
It was so freeing to be like, oh, I can create multiple IPs. I can create multiple story universes and I can just like have them be distinct from each other. And so that was just something to recognize that like you can do either. And in some cases that will be a plus.
Yeah, that's why to piggyback that, do what you love, like find something that you really love to do, whether it's dark, because like you said, this might be a standalone. There might not be this big IP that's attached to it. Maybe it's this one idea that's just perfect for this one idea. Like, does anyone here want to really see Reservoir Dogs 2? Like sometimes just the one thing is perfect as it is. And that's, I love that. I sometimes feel like we're coached to make everything sequels and series. And sometimes you can lose that small town love of a single story,
Yeah. And on your goals.
Yeah. But, there's the other side of that argument as well.
JDM says, Doug, I love your organic approach to God's religion. It's very anthropological. If one's got the time, that would be great for a campaign. I wish I had more time to devote to that kind of detail.
Man, I used to love DMing for role-playing games. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun, man. Like I one of my big like little things is functionality. So I always try to make it's very important for me that the world feels like it works, that everyone is part of this world and no one's just hanging out, like just doing nothing, that the world seems to work. And sometimes that functionality is the addictive part of the storytelling, or the addictive part of the role-playing game, I should say.
Sorry, you're still going through comments. I'll save my comment.
Well, okay. Fact Totem says, is the Golden Compass an example of worlds as characters with more than one world character? Man, it has been so long since I've done the Golden Compass.
I haven't read
that yet, and I'm planning to. Dang, I wish I could answer that question.
Yeah, I can't say because it's been so long. I have read the first book, and I remember really enjoying it. But man, it's been so long. JDM says, Brianna, I can't imagine losing all my DM world notes, let alone 15 years.
Oh, it wasn't 15 years worth. It was specifically, I had a notebook full of vocabulary and grammar rules and the writing system for these two languages. And so,
but that's
so some of it had been digitized, some of it was saved, and a bunch of it wasn't. So, but most of my, so it's not as bad as it sounds, but still pretty sucky. Yeah. I don't want to make a language ever again.
Well, even if you lose one page of writing in your head, you're like, I can't rewrite it better than what I just lost. Like for whatever reason,
I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah. In your mind, it's like that. I can't do that again. I don't want to do that again.
Yeah. It's like touching a hot stove after that. You're like, I don't want to touch that again now. Yeah.
Also, but JDM also says, I feel it for you. Also, the Tidally Planet is really cool. And she's got a great scene that shows that.
Yeah, it was so convenient because when I first had the idea for Dark Goddess and I was just thinking about what kind of world I should create for it, I just happened to have, I stumbled upon an article about tidally locked planets and how they work. And I was like, interesting. Well.
Wow.
Hiking in Norway sounds like a dream come true.
It is so cool, but definitely prepare because it's very different from hiking in the United States.
Sounds like you actually have to know how to navigate overland.
Oh, but just yeah, and you have to if you go to a national park there, they don't give you maps like they do in the United States. You have to go to a bookstore and buy a map and then and they're like, hours away from the park. You have to like go to a bookstore in Oslo and then buy a map, and it's like this huge map. But anyway,
wow,
be prepared.
That's a skill, map reading and map overland navigation, all that. That's an actual skill set,
which apparently I don't possess.
Well, as Americans, I feel like we're, like you said, we're kind of spoon fed the trail, and we don't ever acquire the skill.
Sable says the IPs that have become enduring IPs weren't originally designed to be IPs.
Totally. When the guy who, when Philip K. Dick wrote, it's not called Blade Runner, Electric Sheep. Help me with the title. I Dream of Electric Sheep. Anyway,
the androids dream of electric sheep.
Yes, I can't believe I forgot the title. Anyway, he wrote it for like what Brianna was talking about, like just write it because you love this one story, and then we're the ones who are like, oh, let's create a Blade Runner role-playing universe, which, by the way, I bought the book from Free League Publishing.
Oh, you did?
Oh, my God. Yes. I have all the Alien stuff. I have the Blade Runner. I would love to play an adventure in the Blade Runner universe.
Well,
oh, my God.
Actually, no, Doug. Okay, so wait a minute. I got, hang on. So I got Blade Runner. Okay, so this is Blade Runner right here. But
yes,
we've been over this on the morning grind. I got the Blade Runner starter set over here. It's sitting someplace, but that could also be done. If you want to play that, I want to play that too. It seems we could do that for dinner and a board game. We could play
Blade Runner and Alien are the two that I'm dying to play for Free League. And by the way, Alien, I've read it, man. I love Free League. I've got all of them right up there. I don't know if you could see them right here.
I don't have the Alien book. James Bacon was actually talking about it because as cinematic role playing, I bought this, or did I buy this, or was I sent this? Free League might have sent this to me.
Oh,
but I realized that it was this is not standalone. I got to have some other Alien stuff, so we can add those to dinner and a board game. That'd be fun to do some role playing on dinner and a board game.
What's cool about Alien is those things are pretty deadly. You don't last long when an alien enters the game space. Someone's going to die, and it's probably going to be you. So they're not long games.
But
so
yeah,
they
talking
recommend funnel, where you create multiple characters and just kind of funnel them through to see who survives, if anyone, which is actually kind of cool because I lived in the era for a while where you built characters up over years to be like these like level 28 and Brianna, like big budget, the big budget adventures. So now there's kind of this movement for the low budget adventures where you don't build a character you're attached to. You don't try to level them up. You just hope to survive. And then eventually you don't. An Alien plays right into that.
So Sable says it's like what Pressfield warned against with hack writing. If you're writing to make money, you're doing it for the wrong reason.
Yeah, I think if you're overly focused on that, then you're probably... It's almost like dating a girl where you say what you think she wants you to say. Maybe you pass that test. Maybe she's like, oh, this guy's interesting because he says everything. But that's not you. Like, I think you have
That's a really interesting metaphor.
Totally. Because are you just trying to be liked? Are you just trying to get a certain outcome? Or are you on a date? Are you trying to be you and maybe she likes you and maybe she doesn't? Like, are you willing to risk rejection, at that level? So I would rather be rejected for being myself than being rejected for trying to be somebody else.
If you're gonna put in all that effort. A complete side note, I was trying to share it didn't let me post this comment. I guess I can't post links, but I was going to show you guys the picture of me on the wrong mountain.
Oh, if you put it in the private, I can post a link. Put it if you need a link, put it in the private chat.
Okay, and then you can post it. Yeah, so you guys can see a picture of me on the wrong mountain, just complete random from my blog from a while ago. I have a very practical world building thing for people. This is a tool especially for complicated worlds. If you need to keep track of things, that I guess I could either I could share my screen or you could, Heath.
If you want to bring it up, you can bring it up. That you should be able to do that.
Because I'll show you what
link
I did.
Posted in the chat to Brianna on the wrong mountain.
Huh?
I said the link is posted in the chat now.
Yeah, so you guys can see me on the wrong mountain. But I have actually I'll share this link too.
Oh, you just moved it. I was trying to highlight it.
I'm going to give people the link to what I'm about to show you.
All right, I got to see
it's an example of what kind of thing that you can create. So I have Neurasia.com, but I created this on World Anvil. I don't know if you guys are familiar with World Anvil.
Yes.
But it is great. I'm no longer paying for it, so mine has ads on it, which is unfortunate, but let me go ahead and share my screen. If you wouldn't mind sharing that link as well.
Oh, you want me to share that link? Okay.
Yeah, the Neurasia.com if people want to see it themselves.
I got you. I see what's going on. Okay. I got it.
Well, I forgot how to share my screen. Give me a second. It's great because you can start. So what I have right now actually is great because it is the free version. So you can see like what you can do just with the free version.
Wait, hold on. So I got it. So stop screen sharing, present, share screen. So that's you on the wrong mountain? Looking at the mountain you're trying to... Okay, so there we go.
So that's the moment of reckoning.
That's a moment you don't want to be at in real life with some climbing that. Oh my God, I climbed the wrong mountain.
You can see I'm on the top of we're up high in elevation.
That's the moment you really see in real life though. You still climbed a mountain. There's still merit to. Yeah. In writing though, you don't want that snapshot. Where you're like, I just wrote this thing that is not my story.
well, but it could still be, Doug, because you might still get something published.
That's true. That's true.
You might have something published, but you realize that it could be a comedy or whatever. It could be whatever. But you're like, no, my mountain was supposed to be a drama. The story in my heart is a drama that I've been trying to write, and you didn't write it. You wrote something else. So you could still have a sense of accomplishment, which I've experienced in life, but it's totally the wrong mountain. It's the wrong mountain.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. That's a good point.
So here it is.
Oh, wow. Zoom in on that. My God. Yeah. There's why is it showing up? So the ads are kind of annoying. That's the annoying thing about the free version. But so here is an example of, so I created this just like if you're a super fan of my world, you can go and interact with it. I need to put more stuff here, but
this is awesome, Brianna.
You're about to see this. This is I wanted something like this to exist. And when they finally created World Anvil, I mean, for years, I've been wanting something like this to exist. It is so cool. I highly recommend.
Oh my God. So this is what World Anvil is?
Yeah. So, okay. The coolest thing are the interactive maps. Click on the interactive world map. You got to see this. You got to see.
No, I can't. If I do this, I'll never come back.
Oh, see, stupid ad. Just click close. All right. So here, here you can see I have way too much going on in this world. So yes, so you have like this thing you can click on. Some of them have like pictures too. That's not a good one. Click on one of the other regions, and then you've got your pictures of this is what this part of the world looks like, and anyway, so that's fun. So these are some of these are areas that of course happen in the story. And there's like a printed version of this map, like in the book, of course, but yeah, so it's like this is very fun to create. Like it's pretty easy to do too. And there's more details and why does it say that? That's an error. I need to come back to that. That is a historical event. Oh my God, it's way too much going on.
Oh my God. Brianna, if this was available when I was a kid, I would be in an asylum by now. I know. I would be in a fetal position in the corner, rocking.
Click on so click on. Do you see up on the top right corner where you have those like
this
that thing? So you can so there's different versions.
Trade routes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, some trade routes going on just for the heck of it. And to be clear, this map itself I created in a different program, but this allowed me to make it interactive, basically. So those little like green things that you click on and whatnot. And there's another one that another one of those layers that you should click on.
Terrain.
So now you can see what it looks like. So there's your terrain and so anyway, that's very fun. I'm sure people that like building will enjoy this. And they have all sorts of other, like if you do the paid version, there's so many more things you can do with the style of it and whatnot. But the free version is quite great.
Oh my God. What's the paid version do?
Oh, I mean, you can. There's different levels of paid. Like,
hold on, I can show you because I have the paid version.
Oh my God, I don't even know if I want to know about it.
It's limitless. It gets limitless, but it's like, and they're constantly improving it. They're constantly adding stuff. It's a really good community.
Even
go back to the Worlds of Neurasia up at the top. I'll show you one of my other things that I think is really cool.
Okay.
you click on world, that'll take you back. So scroll down to, it's on the right side, to the world history. Go back up. The timeline, the world history timeline on the right side. Oh, well, you can look at the other stuff afterwards, but I want to show you. I want to show you the world history.
Sorry. I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a little bit wonky, the organization of it. But look at this stuff. So I, of course, because like I said, I was showing.
Oh my God.
So, but if you like making stuff like this, so this is, I remember, it's several thousands of years that go up to the point of this story. So here's all this, like, so they let you like color coordinate things, where I have some of these are regional events. That's what some of these are, events that are important for like the, whatever, the world in general. Creation of things, wars, blah 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 blah. But yeah, it's really cool, and you can connect these, so you have different articles in World Anvil, like in any one of these things you can click on. Some of them don't actually say anything more than what you're seeing right there, but if you wanted to go deep, like you click on this, the founding of Sept, and then you go in, and then it tells you a whole story about how that place was. Say some of these are
like more reading the Dornish Empire.
Yeah, so that gets you into. That's exactly.
This is like a digital abyss that I would just.
Almost all these are incomplete. Yes, and you see why it got burned out. But yeah, the Greek girls. Yeah, and so so much fun.
That is just too awesome, dude. Yeah. I used to buy these giant poster boards or giant sketch pads and spend weeks penciling in my maps. Color, like it just took for freaking ever. And then I would draw out maps of cities with buildings and architecture. Like it's stupid, like it's ridiculous.
All right, you should go now though. I'll take you back to the front. I want to show you a couple more things that this place
okay
contains.
Yeah, sure.
Unless you want to keep scrolling, but
no.
Go
this
back.
Is amazing.
Let's go back to the homepage.
Go to New Ranger homepage.
Yeah, I love the design of it. This is it's the free version anyway. But so this will be on the left hand side. So as you can see, languages, historical figures, place, religions. I think the coolest thing is probably if you go to the languages. And click on either one of those, which it doesn't matter. Mishindian actually is more developed. That one is the one that I put most of it and didn't get as lost.
Mishindian, I like that word.
Huh?
I like that word, Mishindian.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, there you go. It's spoken across the northern plains by the Dorans of the Dorish Empire. Blah 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 blah. So it lets you put like, at a glance, this thing on the side. I put links to like the dictionary they have online and stuff.
So if I ever meet you, I can say Shova, and you'll be like, "Oh,
yeah," and I won't remember.
He's being casual.
He's being casual.
Oh, it's funny. But coming soon, alphabet and punctuation. I have my alphabet, and I don't remember what they all are. But I'm going to have to recreate that. But yeah, so it gives you it's cool. If maybe I should have done it in my own, but I don't know. I like seeing the end result. It's the back end is cool because you go in and it creates these different sections for you that you can fill out.
Oh, cool. People speak differently based on which person they're speaking in. Well, I guess we do too.
Yeah, we do that as well.
I guess I just never saw a chart for regular English to break it down like this.
I love languages.
That's
but
awesome.
Yeah, so anyway, so that is like, I mean, you can scroll down.
How long has this taken you, Brianna? You don't even have to answer. You just told me.
I don't want to think about how long this took me. Like I said, I could have written multiple novels, multiple books at the time I took to develop this world. So, yeah. But this was helpful for me because it was like I created this stuff and it was just chaotically written in notebooks. So I was using this as just a way to.
I love the example here. You slay the monster. That's your example.
I buy bread. Yes.
No, you slay the monster.
It's so helpful to help, organize stuff. And I haven't done this for the Dark Goddess world yet, but it's also partly because it's easy for me to remember everything in that one. Whereas in this one, it was, or like, especially if I write a novel and it's a big novel and there's a lot of details, I want to remember that I've made that world building note so I can hopefully not contradict
I'm
it
a
later.
lover, not a fighter. That was one of your examples.
I am a further examples. Say that for us right there. I am a lover, not a fighter. How do you
Tell us
say
how
that?
it would sound, Brianna.
Hold on. It's been so long. Try to remember where is the accent on Nekreniso Tore just Nuvisho. That's almost right. Just Nuvisho.
Say it again.
Wait, Carniso. Nekarniso Tore just Nuvisho. Yes, that's how you
Your
say it.
American accent is so.
That's speaking,
I did create an accent for both languages.
speaking
Over the
Macedonian.
top, very unnecessary, but it's fun because I am going to do a audiobook for it, so I can do all that. Yes.
Wow.
Macedonian words for love. Romantic love versus familial love.
Yes.
Friendly and compassionate love versus delight or enjoyment.
That's like very similar to what you have.
That's like saying I love painting. Well,
Exactly.
I guess there's brushes. That's where I got the idea.
And there's a fun little, there's so many like characters that have names that are from this. So like you have Karina, and there's a character named Karina. It's like, oh, that's what her name means. That's cool. It's like she means love. Which
that is cool.
Personality,
cool
very much. But yes. This is making me remember why I liked making this world. This has actually been really healthy for me.
It might get you back to the world, right? To do the sequel.
My subconscious knows it's coming because I have my 2 screenplays.
Your subconscious knows it's coming.
I told my newsletter subscribers once I have my Hollywood portfolio put together, I'm going to write the sequel. So it's coming. So yeah. Anyway, so I recommend World Anvil. It's and it's fun because I wanted to create the talking about the joy of the sort of delight of exploring the world. That's of course a big part of that particular story universe. It's that delight. So being able, the World Anvil allows you to kind of create that feeling of like, here, I want to let you go ahead and explore it more. It facilitates the clicking because you can link things together of like, let me just explore this world in more depth. So anyway, I recommend it both for yourself to like help organize things, and it can be fun as a
Brianna, that's amazing.
Oh, he's got his. Show them the back end. Yes,
this is the back end, right? So it was the case that for a few months earlier this year, about 3 or 4 months, World Anvil sponsored the Morning Grind.
Oh,
what?
Yeah.
So World Anvil did sponsor the Morning Grind, but we didn't have the audience to have people to sign up. So they actually wanted more. They didn't want to sponsor live shows as much anymore, but videos. And I wasn't making videos because there was so much going on. I was just doing the live streams. But I really want to talk to them again because obviously they do a whole podcast on world building. So there's the World Anvil podcast that's only about world building. And I would love to have some of them on Table Talk later to talk about it. But I'm a fan of the World Anvil product, and on the Morning Grind I started to load some of Rabavania into this because I thought that the Tales of Rabavania, its main web page, needed to be like a World Anvil page.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
And like its world primer, the world primer for that needs to be online. So when you're coming in here, like what are you talking about? Are you talking about a building, a character, a country, an organization, vehicle, ethnicity, document, military unit, plot? Like what kind of article are you creating like for some type of thing? So you go
like pre-populates the certain kinds of things that you would put in that. And it's
right.
And then you can change it. You can put whatever you want and not put whatever you want and create new categories. So it's completely, customizable.
Wow.
But they save you time of being like, oh, is this an article? Is this a document, or is this a historical entry? Whatever it is, it saves time because they have those.
Like, for instance, I had religion and magic and druidism. So I had put in, now I had not gone into like the pictures and things like that, but I had that loaded in. So you should be able to go to open in world. So that's the back end. But then the front end would be like this. This is as far as I got. But druidism and talking about druidism.
I can see you're paying for it because you have one of the cool styles.
I do. This is the paid version, so there aren't ads on it. So I had paid for it to put this together. So
wow.
So the dashboard, the articles. So this is an unpaid advertisement for World Anvil because
I know, right?
Maybe they'll sponsor you again.
Yeah, I know, because it's a natural match. We need more people. The maps. This is where you load in the maps, the timelines.
Those are my two favorite things: the maps and timelines.
Oh my god!
The
I can't wait
images that you load in.
When I write more stories in this world, I'm going to add more to the world.
Manuscripts, advanced.
I'm getting excited again. This is so good.
Calendars, content trees, discussion boards.
Oh my god!
Player characters, so you can add in your RPG people if people are going to be playing.
Yeah,
in
so
here.
this is very well built. It's built for novelists, but it's also very well built for RPG players, and it's built with that audience in mind as well.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
So if you can load in your RPG characters in here. So if you're playing in a world and you're trying to keep that, you can keep that in here. Let me see if I can find one of the videos that I did of them. Oh, I probably can't. But yeah, there's so much in here. World Anvil is fantastic.
Wow.
Come on. Yeah.
What a nightmare and a dream.
Both, all the temptations.
Duck's rule number 0, no World Anvil.
I don't think you guys know. Like, this is a rabbit hole I would never crawl back out of.
I literally spent hours and it was like getting sucked into a video game. That was how much fun I was having when I was building that out. Yeah.
Well, you did a good job. I mean, it was very awesome. Like, I got a sense for the world just by you scrolling through it. So, I mean,
that's cool.
That's awesome.
And that's all that was just like one corner, like the area that is in that book. So,
wow.
Let's see. The controllable clicking caused the highlighted links in any Wikipedia article or similar world link type website, resulting in hours spent following a chain of subject. Exactly. And so that's what you set up with World Anvil. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
But there are other have you heard of Alchemy RPG?
No.
We looked at Alchemy RPG on the grind. It's and we might want to use it for some things for the RPGs for Dinner and a Board Game. It's intended. It's a virtual tabletop for playing role-playing games, but it's intended to give you a cinematic experience because we've got the virtual tabletops that are very much I'm moving a guy 3 spaces. I'm moving over here. But Alchemy RPG has a lot of like the wiki for the world and stuff, and I'm thinking about using that as well. But also, you would get to immediately bring that into your game. And so if you and your characters show up at a particular town, for instance, you get to show, what picture needs to be displayed to all the characters in order to get the feel of this town across to them. And then also what music needs to be playing, when this town. So it's not so much about I'm moving this guy 2 steps over to attack this guy, but the narrative style role playing. We're here and let's invoke the feel of this particular location. And we looked at that on the morning grind a few months ago, and I've still got that in the back of my mind when I'm doing world building, because that adds all of that in. And it also gives you an executable step for something to bring everybody in and then play and experience the world.
That's how I used to like to play, was the cinematic. I used to have all soundtrack music, and sometimes I'd even have like ambiance sound effects in the background. Like I used to love building out a place.
Stray again reminds us that Brianna's badass. I think you can take your data with you. That's a big thing with World Anvil, that they want to be sure that you're not locked in, so you can export everything from your World Anvil. So if you use
the free version, you can't make it if you're in the free version, basically, if you complete an article and you make it this thing that you can interact with, it is always public. That's one of the paid for things. If you want it to be like only newsletter subscribers can see this or something, you have to pay for it.
Make it privatized.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You can hook it up to like a Patreon. So if there are certain pages that you want only Patreon members to get to or something, you can integrate it with that. So you can have people subscribe to your world and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sable says conlang is its own hobby. Fascinating.
Oh, it sure is. Yeah.
What's conlang?
Constructed languages.
Constructed languages.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes.
Thank you,
It
Silva.
is. That's
Knowing I was going to ask.
Yeah, I literally spent so much of my life. I made one when I was younger, and it wasn't working, so I threw it all away and created another one. So it's like it's kind of like your first novel is no good. Like my first conlang was not good.
Well, Factotum says I got started in conlang and then realized my audience likely wouldn't care that much.
But the benefit of it, again, it all depends on what kind of story you're telling. But like when you're reading, a story where, say, it's just like a modern day context or whatever, like one of your characters speaks French, but it's all in English because you're writing an English story. Sometimes you might have some French words in there speckled in and that aren't translatable, and that like helps with believability that this is, we're in a French setting, whatever. Sometimes you can do that in a fantasy setting. That can be, if you're building that kind of a world, like it can be useful to have some, fake words. You don't have to build a whole language to do that though. But then that can like help kind of create that immersion, I guess.
Well, even in my historical fiction, sometimes it's really fun to use a Latin phrase. Like I was naming off just this morning while I was describing the street and I was listing off some of the brothels, and I was like, I'm going to use Latin phrases. So I made up like 3 different brothel type names, like names of the establishment, using the Latin phrases and their translation. So it's fun. It's part of world building.
Yeah.
But like I was, so Factotum says, so unless it's for my entertainment, it's just energy that can be put into other work.
Exactly.
So I was going to say that, with that, like if you want to develop the language, when do you need to develop the language? Well, you might not need to develop it until it's actually heard. And so if it's going to be in a movie, and someone needs to say it, well, then that's when we got these phrases. This needs to be said. It's like that's when you develop.
And then you hire a constructed language,
language
expert to do it for you,
right? Yeah. And target it to what's actually going to be seen on screen,
right?
Or heard on screen in this.
Well, but there's also the issue of relevance. Like when Tolkien did it, he was using the language to describe like places, specifically because that's the name of the place, because those are the people that made that place a long time ago. And Tolkien quite often, and I know I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know, but he'd have like 4 or 5 names for one thing. He's like, oh yeah, in Elvish it's called this, and then in Dwarven it's called this, and even him, Gandalf Greyhem, like there's like different Stormcrow. There's all these different names for the same thing. So, he was such a linguist that it just came out naturally for him. I think for us who are not, collegiate academic linguists, it feels like we're forcing it into our story sometimes, but it comes up on natural time. So I think if you think about the relevance of another language being part of the culture, then you pick your spots.
So I was going to say that I remember reading a story, and that was immediately stood out to me is they don't care about that, because everything was just written in English, but they would say said in whatever language. Yes. And I remember reading that and I'm like, they do not care. This author does not care, about trying to come up with the language of this. It was a Star Wars.
You don't have to, right? That's a really good way to go around it. Yeah.
And even when they were talking about figures. Like figures as far as like a number for the cost of something, they just completely skipped anytime somebody had to say a number. In fact, the phrase was, he named a figure. And they just completely skipped.
I don't want to figure out the economics of my world.
How much the economics of this is going to be, anything like that, skipped. But it also keeps, because in that case, Star Wars becomes a shared world. It was a Star Wars novel. And so it also does have a functional perspective of not nailing somebody else down to some number of credits that, I don't know, this particular starship costs or whatever it is, or what this sounds like. But it stuck out to me because it was so opposite of Tolkien that like we're just moving on. We're not doing the world building.
Like Star Trek never really solved whether or not they have money.
I know we talked about that a lot.
That's a big one.
That is on your computer.
Servers, yeah.
it can be accessed through their servers, but I'm going to have to look up what the download stuff. You can get your data off of it, and I think in other ways than PDFs, like as brought up earlier. I haven't done it yet, so I haven't know, but you can bring it down to you if you need to. I don't know if you can run it as your own wiki on your own computer. I don't know about that. I think it's on their servers, but you can make it private on their servers. You can do that. Sable Phoenix, free super chat, 4-month super chat. Sable Phoenix, a member for 4 months, says you missed what that refers to, specifically the definition of wikilepsy.
Wikilepsy?
Oh, wait a minute.
I don't know what that is.
Well, it's a wiki.
Yes, you're creating your own wiki.
Sable is anticipating our questions. That's twice.
Yeah, that's a wiki. It is a wiki. And we get into wikilepsy, right? When you get too deep inside your wiki and your world building and stuff like that. Because I was going to think you can run your own Wikipedia wiki.
Yeah.
Like you can download all the software that runs Wikipedia and put it up. And I'd actually started that at one time. I was like, all right, I'm going to do a wiki for my worlds. And so it was based on the Wikipedia stuff. And I actually tried to figure out how to do that. And I got
people do that. Yeah. I always encounter wikis for, worlds out there
that are built on the Wikipedia.
Right. Well, like when you counter like whatever, like there's a Cthulhu Mythos wiki that's out there. Like that's, is that what that is? Is that what people are doing? Like they're downloading that and then
I'm sure you can modify Wikipedia, but you can actually like the code that runs Wikipedia is open source. So if you want to run your own thing that operates like Wikipedia, you can download that and you can put it on your own server. So if
that's what I'm saying. Like but I feel like I encounter those all the time.
Right. Yeah. Now I don't know if those that you're talking about are actually running off of Wikipedia's stuff, but like Fandom does. There are all kinds of on the Fandom website. Fandom, I think that's its own software. I think.
Okay, interesting.
But I was trying that. I was like, I can download the Wikipedia software, and I was trying to get that. That was years ago, trying to get this up and running on my own server or something like that. Then I found World Anvil. Don't bother trying to run your own Wikipedia server. Just use World Anvil.
Yeah, that would be much faster. Yeah, that's a great example of someone saw a problem and a need, and they created like us world builders have been needing that exact thing for a long time. No, they do not take your IP.
They do not.
No. Absolutely not. They do have a contest though, which are kind of cool. Like every so often, I want to say they're in November, December. Like it's almost like kind of like NaNoWriMo kind of a situation where you can like you're like writing a certain amount of world building on your site. It's so tempting is what you do.
So wait, you just spend a whole month world building on this site and then they grade you?
I forget how it works, but like there's like if you enter in during that period, there'll be like competitions for like best best language page or best in-universe story or whatever, and then like because it's all public, so your stuff, so other people read your stuff, and then they'll have like goals, like word count goals. It's so bad.
See, I feel like this is either the greatest thing in the world or the utter first to actual writing.
But they're very, very clear on that. But here, like maybe elsewhere as well. But once they said, what about copyright? Once again, your work is your work. We do not and will not in any way claim ownership over it. In fact, we plan to explore ways to make sure that you can prove the ownership of your world. We value your intellectual property and we're here to protect it.
Good.
World Anvil people are good people. So
they are good people. Yeah.
I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have taken the sponsorship. I wouldn't have put my work on it or taken the sponsorship if I thought that it was something like, oh, you can publish it and then we own everything that you put on this website. So that's a absolutely valid concern, but I haven't seen that.
No, and it's the people that are running it, like they're geeks themselves, like they're the kind of people that would use it. So that's and
also wikilepsy. But also maybe that was also in regard to the uncontrollable clicking caused by highlighted links on any Wikipedia article or any similar Wikipedia type website, resulting in hours spent following a chain of unrelated subjects. No, that's it. Yes. No, I know that.
And what's worse than that is when you're the one creating it. So you're creating it and you're going, oh, I could create an article to link here. That was what would get me for hours and hours.
I would be stuck.
It was so bad. I had to write notes. I'd be like, oh, I'm going to make this one later and make this one and make this one. And
See, to me, that's a black hole. There's no escape velocity.
No, complete black
so
hole.
here's how I was handling that. Sable says TV tropes is the worst for Wikilepsy. Yeah, but it's such a great website. Yes, but here is how I was trying to fight that as far as its creation, because the Rabavania World Primer I had said was going to be 5,000 words.
Oh, you put a limit on it.
So I put a limit on it. I was not.
Good idea.
And so I've been thinking about it in terms of what's actually going to be published. So there could be a soft copy version that's online that you could get to, whatever, and go through the links and stuff like that. But then also that needs to be published as a book. So I thought about the product as the book. It needs to be this number of words, this number of page count, whatever. Then the content of that book can be put on World Anvil. But that way I'm not just creating an infinite World Anvil.
Yeah.
Well, but like all those supplementary books for all the role-playing games that I've had, it's similar. They have all these, I can grab any one of these, Star Wars universe or the Lord of the Rings universe, and there's all this stuff on taverns, and you use it, especially for role-playing. Like, it's this open source world. You can just click on it, and there's all this information for you as the DM to draw upon, and for your character, so you don't have to make it up as you go. Have you thought about Rabavania as a role-playing world?
Well, yeah, I know. I've already written the Rabavania RPG World Primer.
This is Heath you're talking to. Of course he has.
Is me.
Okay.
I mean, James, it's 5,000 words. What I'm doing is a world primer first. So what I was doing is, so here's the way I approach that. Okay, so this was my strategy for approaching that. So
although we each got a chance to talk about our different worlds on this.
I was trying to come up with a strategy that's product focused about how do I get these things done that I'm trying to do. So I decided that this was going to be the kind of product that I'm doing. This is Fate Accelerated by Evil Hat Games, but it's a 6x9 book. So I'm product focused. It's a 6x9 book. It's soft back. Now in their case, it's a color front and back, color cover, but it's black and white or grayscale interior. But I think I'm going to do color interior. But I said, all right, this is what, and I did run over my page count a little bit. But I said, this is a 48-page book. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a 48-page book that is 6x9 that you can use for role-playing in Rabavania. And I'm using the 5e rules, but I'm also working on converting that, or have been. I haven't worked on it a couple of months because I've been working on other things, but to a couple of other rule systems as well, like Easy D6. And that way it's the same lore. But the idea was that since it's only a 48-page book of 6x9, I could replicate it in multiple systems. So I wrote everything here, and then on the morning grind, we've been going over what's in this. And James has already edited this book for me. So I got to get that to Brianna, who's going to do the layout for me. Oh, did Brianna freeze? Oh, there she is. Nope, she came back. So that's going to be my entry into my worlds, because I'm going to do the same thing for Theophany. I'm going to say, here's a 48-page. This is so you can get you can go as deep into world building as you want, but it's got to be done in 48 pages. So if someone had 48 pages and looked at this and said, what is Rabavania for world building? That's it. That's the first step. And I'm going to do the same thing for Theophany. And then, I want ultimately something like this. So here's 6x9, but much thicker. Here is where the world building ultimately wants to go. I like this size book. This is a 300-page book. But again, which is longer. That's why I'm doing 48 pages first to see if people will like it. But then, okay, here's a 300-page book, 6x9. And ultimately, I want to have one of these for Theophany and one of these for Rabavania. And so this is where I put all of my world building energy. So and then the stories come from that, but I can go as deep into world building as I want, because I know that I'm going to do a primer of this, so you can pick it up, at Gen Con or whatever. This will be more expensive, but this is relatively cheap. This gets you playing in Rabavania or Theophany, and then if you like it, there will be my goal. My goal is to have a book like this on the world of each one.
And you say it's as deep as you want to go, but there's still a limit on that. Like you still have it's for a purpose. It's like, this is the stuff that you need to know for this RPG game. So I think there's this a recurring principle here was that it's always helpful to have a limit.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
There's very different kinds of limits depending on your goals.
And that is so important because what we just talked about with just World Anvil, that is a negative to World Anvil because there's no natural limit to World Anvil, which is obviously one of its advantages. But it's also a negative. But if you look at it from a product perspective, this is product number 1. And then if it goes well and people like it, this is product number 2. And so there's a certain number of words, a certain number of pages, which has to include illustrations. And the world has to be articulated within those constraints. And the constraints are so important for creativity and world building. So I'm product focused on the world building.
This is cool. This is giving me a thought, which is just that that is what I need to figure out what my limit is for the next book. It's just be like, all right, so this is my limit. This is what I need.
And for the sequel?
Yeah, so that makes it so much less intimidating. So I need to figure out how to think about that. The natural limit is what are the areas that the characters interact with? That's obvious. But even that is not, trust me, that is not a limit because it's like, well, I could do all sorts of stuff about this city.
Well, but keep in mind, you've already done a lot of world building for book 1. So in some ways,
we're going to completely new locations in book 2. So,
well, maybe you don't know where they're going to go though. Find your starting point. Find your, it's weird, and this comes from, and I know this is controversial, but from where you dream, find an image in your head that has a sweeping mood or emotion attached to it that you want to write about. You want to explain that image in your head. Just start there and then see where it goes.
I totally. I'm just talking about making sure I stop and don't burn myself out again.
Where do we stop? What I'm trying to say is that crossing the bridge back over into the big budget universe that you created, start small is what I'm thinking.
Well, okay, so here was the technique that I did here. Now, as it turns out, 5,000 words, by the way, just if you're doing this, 5,000 words is actually a bit long. So there's less than 5,000 words in this. If you're doing a 6x9 and you got to have illustrations, once I said, all right, this could be 5,000 words as I'm trying, I think that actually my Rabavania books can be slightly thicker than this because I said 5,000 words. If you're trying to actually contain it to 48 pages, 6x9, I think with illustrations and maps and things that you want to have, it's going to be less than 5,000 words, which is, by the way, a very doable project. That's a very doable project. But here's the way that I approach this. So, it might be like 4,000. It might be 4,000 words, but I got 5,000. So I'm going to do 5,000, even though it's a little bit thicker. So whatever. But if you say, all right, I got 5,000 words, and then I took Wolfgang Bauer's advice, and I listened to his, who is obviously running very successful Kobold Press and is doing Midgard, and which I've role played in. Lou ran Midgard games and stuff like that. And his advice on how do you structure a book, a world book for an RPG. And then I created an outline, and I was like, okay, I need to cover who the players are going to be playing, those characters. So that needs to be a chapter in this book. I need to have who they're playing and who is the most iconic kinds of characters that I can have in Rabavania that they're going to be playing. That's got to be a chapter. I need to have locations and some exciting locations to go adventuring in. That needs to be another chapter of the book. And then I need to have magic and religion. And, what makes that something that's different. So I knew those were going to be my major chapters. I wanted to have an intro that brought you up to speed on the history of stuff. And so I created that outline, and I did it in Scrivener. So I wrote in Scrivener. And so I created the outline of everything that's going to be there. And then I assigned a word count to every article. And I said, so I've got 5,000 words. This is what I would want to tell somebody. And I really did think about it, is that if this 48-page book is all that ever existed about Rabavania, what would I want to be sure that I told people to communicate this world? And so I created that outline with that in mind. And then I assigned 5,000 words to every article in that outline. So that when I sat down to write it, okay, I'm writing about the witches. And I'm not sure what it is, but I have 450 words. I need to communicate everything about the witches that I would want somebody to know in 450 words. And then the knights in 450 words, or whatever exactly it was. You go through and you structure that. Like NPCs is also a section that I had. But I was very deliberate when I wrote that about structuring the outline first. I'm going to do the same thing when I go to Theophany, and then being rigorous in the word count. about how much how much I'm going to spend, how
Like
much time I'm going to
economical.
spend. Yeah, words I'm going to spend. That gets it done from a product perspective. We did that with, and I'm very conscious of that because I've done the product manufacturing and the product creation before. And if you don't limit it as a product, it can completely run away from you. So I highly recommend working backwards from the product and then figuring out what you do from that. You can do the same thing. And because another thing that I would really love to have, we were going to have for Journey to the Tree of Sorrows, which I guess we won't, but I want to have it for my work.
He reaches back to his blue library.
I know.
No flashlight this time.
Is do you remember these, Doug? Do you remember the world boxes?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So here's what you do. I would love to have ultimately
like Menzo Baranzin or
well, this one is Forgotten Realms, the Forgotten Realms campaign.
Yeah. What was it called with Drizzt Do'Urden? Like, wasn't it Menzo Baranzin?
Drizzt Do'Urden?
Yeah, Drizzt Do'Urden. Remember him from the old school?
Yeah, he's here.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. He's part of the Forgotten Realms.
Sets.
Yeah. So, but here's what you do. So I would love to have a box set, and we don't do box sets anymore for Worlds like we used to. I mean, we were talking about that in the morning grind. We've got some great boxes like the intro to Pathfinder, but we don't have they do books now instead of box sets. I'd love to have a great box set for the Worlds, but here's what you do. You start with the product. Pick up a box set that you like, and what I've done is measured exactly the dimensions of this box. What is this dimension? What is this dimension? What is this dimension? Figure out, okay, you want it to be full color, whatever. You want it to be, top and bottom, like it's this. If you want some kind of weird opening, that's going to cost you. But, this is a normal box. So go with a normal box, and because manufacturers can manufacture that. And then exactly how much space you've got to put world building material in. Like, that's how much I've got to create. And what do I want to have in this? It can be poster maps. It can be, like poster maps. These the Forgotten Realms has the poster maps. Like, it's just,
man, I used to love those.
Oh, I love maps so much. That's something I need to. One of these days, I want to make side note, just like a store or paraphernalia when I have more books in that world. Like, I want to make some maps people can have and like.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Put up on the wall,
Yeah.
The folded version, but then you could also have the rolled versions if people I want to hang this on my wall, but I don't want it folded. But poster, but then you start to think about what would I have?
Cloth, like a tapestry,
a cloth map. I want books inside, and they're going to be soft back. So what size do they need to be in order to fit in this box? What's my page count going to be? And then you can my brother and I used this when we were doing Kickstarters and we were running Rain Studios. When we first had an idea for a product after the first one, because the first one we did in a ridiculous way, but after the first one, we came up with before we even started design of the game, we came up with exactly the dimensions of the product that we wanted to create. And then put stuff inside of it that approximated the weight of exactly what we wanted to create. Because then you can go to a manufacturer and you can say, hey, I'm thinking about bringing online this product, like if this is going to be your product or a book or whatever, and it's going to be going to have these exact components in it, because they don't care what you write on it. You can write whatever you want from your world building perspective. What the manufacturer cares is you've got one box that's of this size, that's full color. It's got a soft copy book in it, that's 64 pages and is black and white. Like, that's what they need to do in order to give you a quote on what it's going to take to manufacture that. And then you might go, whoa, that's way too expensive. And then okay, I'm not going to be able to have my nice cloth map. That's got to be something else. That's too expensive to put, or whatever.
No doubt.
Or okay, I'm going to have to go, 48 page books instead of 64 page. But that's important to know before you start writing, because you don't want to have 64 page books and then go to the manufacturer and say, I'm trying to do this, and then you realize, it doesn't even fit in your box or something like that. That's no good. You want to have the specifications first and then write all your material to those specifications, working backward from what you want to ship.
I need to take your way of thinking more into this side, because you're reminding me of all these ideas I had in the past that I forgot about, like, because that stuff is so cool, like having the physical aspect. Yeah.
Heath, am I detecting a passion for the product creation process?
Well, there is. Yes. There is. No, because I thought about that with these worlds, like what products do I want to exist, and will I be very unhappy if I die and they don't? So, so I'm starting with the worlds with something small, and I've got some other ideas too, but this will be the start for both Rabavania and Theophany. But if there was a starter primer that you could pick up at a low cost and figure out whether you liked it, and then there was a much more detailed, if you really like it, here's your book. So if there was a small book, a large book, and then a campaign box for Rabavania and Theophany, and I could see them on my shelves and they were done. You put a box set out there, people are going to buy them.
Yeah, so that seems to be a priority bucket list.
Right. Yeah, it is. And that goes to my relationship with work, because some people are like, if you die, most people don't think, gee, I wish I did more work. But not me, because I know in order to create this, what's it going to take? Work. My life is nothing but work. And if I don't do the work to make those things happen and they don't exist, if I can't look at them on my shelf as I'm dying, I'm going to be very unhappy.
I have a similar feeling, but it's like,
I'm going to wish that I worked more.
Yeah, I have a similar feeling. It's specific. There are specific stories that I have to, and it's actually not that many. I have to, yeah. It's honestly mainly the Dark Goddess thing that now I feel like if that is finished and it exists in some form, even if it just exists in like comic or something, I think I'll be mostly okay to die. I actually do have some non-work related things I want to do before I die. Now that I think about it,
there are some non-work things I would like to do as well.
Yes,
but there's a lot of work related things I would like to do.
Yes,
very interesting.
I want to point out also, just on that thought, if you're thinking about this, another from the product perspective, another huge part of this is shipping. Another huge part of this is shipping. If you're thinking about doing something like this, you've got to think about how you're going to distribute this potentially globally, and that includes shipping. And so if very, very early in your process, you understand that my product's going to be a box of this size and a box of this weight, so put your things that you know exactly how much it is. You can then start to go to freight companies if you need global shipping. You can go to other companies for distributors. There's another word, but who's going to ship, and you can start pricing out how much it's actually going to cost to ship, because shipping will kill you. And you need to know very early on what your freight costs and your shipping costs are. So it might be that, hey, the manufacturer comes back and says, hey, yeah, I can do this box for you at this particular cost. But then you realize it's going to be your shipping cost is going to be too high. So you might have to adjust your shipping cost until you get to a product that you can ship at a price you create and ship at the same you're trying to do. You've got to do that. When I did War of Kings, my first board game, we did not think about that. And by the time we got quotes back from manufacturers, it was astronomical. It was astronomical. And we were even thinking, we got pieces of gold, gold in the game. And my brother and I were thinking, it'd be really cool. What if we had brass coins? Do you have any idea what it costs if you put 100 brass coins in your board game? Well, let me tell you, your shipping cost skyrockets.
You should buy.
You could go to cardboard punch outs are probably fine.
The cardboard punch outs, yeah.
Heath, go to military bases. They have all those spent shells from target practice. Buy all those brass casings, melt them down, mint them yourself.
Yeah, but then you still have to ship them. That's the problem.
You do have to then ship them to people. Because actually, I ordered brass lamellar plates. For lamellar armor, I got brass lamellar armor plates cut and shipped to me.
This is the most Heath statement I think I've ever heard.
I'm looking up lamellar right now.
That it's the
kind of finish what you're saying.
Angel armor that the angels wear, actually. I got those, and it was this small thing. It was this hundreds of things of lamellar, but it was rather small, but it was heavy. I mean, I don't know how heavy that thing is, but my stepmother went to get it from the mailbox, and she actually said, "What did you order? A box of brass?" And I was like, yes. Actually, it is. It is a box packed full of brass.
That's amazing. Yes, I did.
Actually,
It is.
That's like if someone's
if you take
someone
one of
has a
those,
backpack and you're like, "What do you have in here? Bricks?" And you literally just take out some bricks. You're like, "I do actually."
yes.
that's exactly what I've got here. Okay. So I don't know how to pronounce that. Is the big
Menzo
drow city in
Baranzin.
the Forgotten Realms where Dritz is from? Yeah.
Menzo
The
Baranzin.
Dark Sun box. Yeah. I don't have that one, but I got it rebound.
Dark Sun was cool because it took like back then when it first came out, it took like the high fantasy concepts and just went on a brutal kind of side world there. It was awesome. Planescape. Oh yeah, Sigil, where you have all those portals to go to different man, that was a good time when D&D kind of splintered off, and
that was the heyday.
Totally.
It's one of those things you don't know how good you've got it until the days are gone.
100%. But remember, like getting a box set, like a Menzo Baranzin, and you're going to play this adventure. Like that was good stuff, man.
JDM says, Heath, you would have done exceptionally well in the military because you're a motivated AF. You know,
that is, I think, a compliment. I think
it is. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I decided not to join the military. I decided not to join the military. I did notice, I think was it on Twitter or was it on Instagram or something like that, I saw that somebody said that they were just going to start reading AF as foretold. And I think we should do that right here. Heath, you would have done exceptionally well in the military because you are motivated as foretold. Yeah.
I like that. That's a good touch. I like that spin.
I don't know. I'm a fan of the original Four Little Ones.
I like the original as well.
The funny thing, I wrote my first draft of Dark Goddess had a lot of usage of it just to get it out of my system, and then I had to go through and axe each one of them lovingly, put a little smiley face next to it, and be like, "And I'm trying to be PG-13." It's so punchy. That word can accomplish so many things. It's just, it gets right there,
The Heathiest story we have heard yet.
Yeah, it was indeed the Heathiest story. Yes.
That is awesome.
So where do we need to go from here? And especially if we are wrapping up, but also are there we covered a lot of topics because I knew this would be broad, and we covered some things narrowly and some things more broadly. And this is for the chat as well. Are there subtopics of world building? Because we covered story, we covered RPGs, we covered movies.
Strategy of it, and
strategy. Yeah. We even covered from the product perspective, which is interesting.
I like that.
That's the one you don't hear a lot of. So,
and that's not one you hear a lot of, right?
Yeah, the idea of taking your world and commercializing it effectively to people who want to use it,
right?
And you've got to think about how you're going to get it to them. But are there subtopics in there that we have not done, which could be the top? We have tons of topics for Table Talk, by the way. But are there subtopics that we didn't cover that we in the future should, or things that you can think of, including from the chat?
Heath, it might be fun, and maybe this is more of a morning grind thing. I don't know, but it might be fun to judge certain RPGs based on their world building abilities. Like sometimes it's fun for me just to go through a core rule book just to get a feel for the world that they're trying to establish in rules. I remember when I had COVID like 2 years ago, I spent a lot of time just going through core rule books, because when do you have that kind of time to just sit around and do nothing? So I was like page after page after page, reading all this stuff in the core rule books. I think Alien was the big one that I had just bought, and I had a couple different add-ons and everything. And I just went through the whole thing. I absolutely loved it. It might be fun to judge some of these RPGs based on their ability to world build. Are they the big budget types, or are they the low budget types? Because there's a charm to either, because for instance, sometimes a friend of mine will be like, "Hey, you want to play an adventure in Blade Runner?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, yeah, like Blade Runner." Just the idea of the world is what the hook is,
Well, here is something we could mention now or in the future, but it might be its own topic. But I'd be interested to know what you think about this now, Doug. because if you're doing an RPG, if you're doing a world for an RPG, sometimes what you do is you take an existing rule set like 5e and then adapt it to different worlds. And there are a lot of advantages to that. First of all, you don't have to play test the rules because you know that the rules work. But then you're adapting. And then also the advantage is that if people already know 5e and you're bringing out your world, they don't have to relearn the rule set. They're just learning things that are new in your world.
Right. The references. It really comes down like, well, how are the references different? And go ahead.
But the flip side to that is that there's also games where the rule system, like, for example, would be the One Ring RPG for the world of Middle-earth, where the rule system, the actual rules of the game are extremely intentionally designed to invoke a feel of the world. Because for instance, every world doesn't have the D&D magic system, but you kind of have that built in if you've got 5e. So, I do really appreciate those systems, even though it's very easy to pick up a generic system. But the ones that are designed to say, hey, listen, we're doing Middle Earth, or we're doing Neurasia, or we're doing, whatever we're doing, the rule set, not just all of the material, but the rule set has to be designed to invoke a certain feel of this world as we play.
Yeah, I actually like that. Like, this might sound like slightly unrelated, but it's not. For whatever reason, I have bought multiple versions of the game Monopoly. Because I'm an idiot. I'll buy if I'm like, oh my God, it's The Office, but it's Monopoly. I'll get it, and I'll force my family.
You're the person that they keep making him for. You're the
I'm the target audience. So like I have the Avengers Monopoly and Star Wars Monopoly, and I bought Fortnite Monopoly because my oldest son plays Fortnite. But they changed the rules for every Monopoly in order to invoke the feel of the world. So like Fortnite, I don't know if you've ever played it, but like you're in the storm cloud. They have this whole thing with the storm cloud where you lose energy as you go around the board. With Lord of the Rings, there's the One Ring, and it actually affects the characters and the outcome. So I think if you are creative enough on that level, that it's absolutely in your best interest to custom tailor the rules to be
like Harry Potter Clue.
And I have more than one copy of Clue as well for the gameplay. But that's what I'm saying. Like, you could change the rules to match the feel that you're trying to aim for. And I think that if you're going to write rules for your adventure, you should definitely be conscious of that.
But it's a much bigger undertaking. And so like when we were doing During the Tree of Sorrows, we talked about that because I would love to do my own RPG system, and we've been talking about that in the Morning Grind. But like when we were doing the During the Tree of Sorrows, David ultimately made the call, use 5e. This was years ago. This was also before the debacle. But he was like, we were trying to experiment with our own system, but we're also trying to create our own rule system. There may be things about 5e, there are, by the way, that do not perfectly represent the Cthulhu mythos.
Yeah.
But the decision was made, go with it. Because a lot of people understand the 5e rule system. We don't have to take on the burden of a system development ourselves. People know it. We can market it as a 5e, go with 5e. So I said, all right, fine. So I dropped the development of the system and I wrote that book, which is not published, but I wrote that book for 5e. So that would be a good topic later on, like RPG systems or worlds, and comparing whether they have a general system or whether they have a bespoke system and what goes with that.
Well, I got to be honest, and I created a gaming system one time. I think it had of course, got 128 pages or something. And I was trying to simulate, I was frustrated at the time. I was frustrated that role playing only had these hit points rules for physical fights. And I was irritated with that because in real life, and I'm not saying this has to perfectly mirror real life, but you don't walk into a bar, see a hot chick, and then attack the guy who's talking to her. But when I was playing role-playing
or
games,
you don't.
Well, listen, it's pretty
Brianna,
rare.
However.
Well, me.
That's exactly her dating strategy.
That is exactly the opposite of my dating
Well, what
strategy.
I'm saying is actual physical fights, they happen, but they're pretty rare. And they're rare like this, right? But when you're playing a role-playing adventure, every dude who ever walks into a medieval inn and sees a hot chick, they all just swarm her, and it becomes ridiculous. And I was like, you know what? I actually hate that this doesn't feel like real life at all. You know, that these guys are just like pulling out their axes and going like, so I tried to create a system of like social rules.
That's cool.
Because that's really what it's all about. Like when you're like, hey, like when guys are competitive around a girl, they're not punching each other. They're trying to one up each other in certain ways. Socially, it's a little bit more nuanced. Mm-hmm. So I wanted people to roll for that, for a little, what I called social combat, and also mental issues too. Like where you could, instead of dying, like from physical combat, the social repercussion would be like stigma, like you become stigmatized. The mental repercussion would be to go insane or to lose touch with reality. So I had 3 different ways that you could roll and kind of like fight without using your sword all the time or axe. I just wanted there to be other ways that you could be competitive without combat.
Fate does include rules like that.
What's that?
Fate, the Fate RPG. Actually,
it has social combat.
Yeah, you can do that in here. Yeah, we might have.
And this was I did this in 2010, so I'm sure people have done a better job than me. But I did put together a 130-page ridiculous rule book. I tried to invent my own system. To your point, I would have been much happier just borrowing somebody else's system. And
if you were to do an RPG for Faraway Bird.
I actually would love to put together an adventure in the Byzantine Empire. It's so unique.
well, you know, that was part of what I was thinking for Dinner and a Board Game. If we did the RPGs, we could have guest game masters who run a one-shot campaign in their world. So you could run a one-shot in the Byzantine Empire.
Oh my God, I'd make it. I'd try to make it awesome.
Okay. Well,
you know, somebody said, and they're probably not wrong, we might have an accidental all-star team here to produce and create an RPG game. I mean, we have the marketer, the product design, shipping costs. We have editors. Like, we might have an all-star team here to do this.
We might.
I have another possible.
Okay.
Read his comment first.
So Sable says, deep conversation with Geekverse. I wasn't joking that Doug's note system needs to be his next book. I'd love to see a deep dive on that manner of thematic world.
Oh man,
a lot of fans about that.
Well, I'll tell you, it was actually part of the Heroine's Labyrinth, and I had to rip it out because it was distracting from heroine-centric storytelling. And it was in the back of my head. I was like, because just to be upfront, my goal is to share my best strategies with other creatives. That is all I care about. That's why I wrote the book. I don't think I'm an expert. I'm not an academic. I'm not trying to write a scholar. All I care about is like working with other creatives and being like, hey, this is what worked for me. I'm so excited to share this with you. So in the back of my head, this is the other thing that I would love to share, because it takes all that I've worked on that I thought helped me understand things. And again, you're talking to a guy with ADD. So me helping myself understand something has this other side of, now I can share it with somebody. So there is a part of me that would love to write a book on world building, because I have so much work on it.
Yeah. So
go ahead, Brianna.
I have a potential topic that I thought about bringing up, and I was like, no, this is too deep. So this would be one that we could talk about another time. And that's simply magic systems. Like that's an element of world building, about like how you develop a good magic system. What is a bad magic system? I don't know if that would take 4 hours to talk about. It might be a shorter.
No, that's a great topic.
It is definitely a topic. So
I think because magic is becoming so pervasive, like in our culture, like for the gaming world, and even for like writers, there's now becoming like a signature move to have your own style of magic. People want to come up with an angle on it. So I think that's a part of world building. I think that's a creative question to be answered.
Yeah.
I think that's a great topic.
Yeah, we should end
JDM also has an interesting topic that I've got something. How much inspiration from the real world do you use?
Yeah.
I think there should be enough to be relatable to a wide audience.
100%.
I'm actually surprised to think that we didn't even bring that up, because that's
we didn't even
very good note.
We have thoughts on that.
There's the whole like there's a whole like how do I put this? There's a, maybe we'll call it a culture war issue to that question.
Oh, okay.
there's a whole Twitter world. But there's valid critiques on how to do that respectfully and how to
do what?
If you're drawing from the real world.
That's a different
from cultures, and there's ways to do that is,
right. So
not respectful. So there is a whole, like, that is itself a whole conversation.
Right. There is a culture war issue on that. Like, for example, this was back in the 90s that I started to create this one world where I had minotaurs, but I was dressing them like Bedouins. And I realized, like, today you got to be real careful doing something like that. Like, what are you trying to say? Are you saying that this one culture is exotic and you're not? You're the normal culture. So there is a culture war there.
Some valid
you're totally
there,
right.
And there's a very deep thing there that you can explore, because I have nuanced thoughts on that myself. But.
Well, that's true. That's a great point, actually. And also getting back to your original question with the magic, I think that is something that is a dark horse topic that could be massively expansive, meaning there might be a discussion there that people aren't having focused on just that. The world, almost like magic world building in and of itself.
Yeah, because that is a specific thing on, like, there are definitely magic systems I've encountered that worked and ones that didn't, and things that broke the immersion for me as a reader, and then ones that didn't. So it's like, that's a whole, like, I feel like there's a whole technique on doing that well.
Well, but getting back to, I think, the question from the chat too, how much of the real world should you include? I think the issue is relatability. And unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately, because I don't really mean that. It's unfortunate that people are hypercritical, but it is important that you are sensitive in how you are portraying things. That is a vital skill that you're going to have to acquire, whether you like it or not. I think relatability is the key. And my personal belief is that humanity is universal. Feeling emotions is universal. Sadness, universal. Like, it's not that hard to write a character that just experiences these things on those levels. And I think if you stay there, you'll be fine. And I think that drawing things and bringing them in from the outside is a skill. There is a filter today on how to do that. But that's a skill set. And I think if you're serious about it, then you're going to take the time to learn how to do that correctly.
Yeah, there are potential pitfalls there.
Well, there are. You guys took a very different or direction on that than I did, because you're right. I wrote that down. That's its own topic, and there are probably some other people that we could bring in to have that particular discussion on real world inspiration on fantasy.
Yes,
I was taking it when I read that question. I was going to answer it in a much more direct way, and saying that I think that when you deviate from the real world, it should be for a reason. And the default has to be the real world. Because if you're creating a fantasy world and you're going to say, everything is different. This world is so cool. Everything is different.
It doesn't have gravity. Yeah.
It doesn't, right. Things fall up in this world. Exactly. I was thinking about that. Like that you're going to have to explain so many things, and it might be worth it. I mean, you might be able to do it, but that if we're talking about the purpose, and like if you're doing it as a story, like, okay, I'm making all these things different, but these are things that matter. And by the way, if I don't say anything about it, go ahead and fill in from the real world that, people have to eat, gravity falls up. People don't have to eat, they pour their drink in their ears,
and we're all robots.
Right. Or, what all of that is like, I want nothing from the real world here. That becomes very difficult. And so I had a more direct approach to that question about that. I tend to think now from the parsity. There's a word I'm looking for. That's not it, but and that's not brevity either. But when you're talking about efficiency in the world design, what am I trying to communicate? If I'm trying to write a story, I'm trying to communicate something about immortality or this theme or whatever. So I'm going to take something that's otherwise the real world, but I'm going to make something different, like you don't die, because then I can communicate that and then explore its ramifications, and I don't have to explore everything being different.
Point of view.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's one of those things that I would have like almost I thought was obvious, but it isn't. Like that is a point thing, to bring up that like
Point of
you
view.
go way too far with trying to change things and it doesn't.
But point of view can really help you out with those kind of issues, like Clan of the Cave Bear. They tell that story from like a Stone Age point of view. There's almost like no language in it, but there's a point of view. And the point of view is what carries you through it. It's still identifiable. You understand what hunger is, what hunting is, jealousy, hatred, vengeance. Like all of these things are familiar to us. And yet it's told from a Stone Age point of view. It's very difficult for me to imagine unless I'm reading this book. So a point of view can help you. So if you're in a world with no gravity, well, what's that like? I mean, is the person anything like us? And I think, Heath, to your point, if everything's different, then you don't really have a point of view. You're so far off that there's nothing anchoring it. And you're probably not going to have people that are going to be too interested in your story.
Yes, they can't follow it. It's like
they can't follow. There's no. I have a weird little image in my head on how I try to when I'm writing. I think of like my record player. I'll put a record on, and there's a needle, and it's spinning. And if it skips, I notice it. And if it skips twice, I'm getting irritated. If it skips more than that, I'm taking the record off. That's how it is when people are reading. So they're reading. They want to know that they could follow everything that you're saying. If it keeps skipping, if you're like, oh, and there's no gravity. Oh, and there's no that. It skips. So it's like playing a record that all it's doing is skipping. No one's going to listen to that. You can't even hear the music.
There's
even
a cost involved.
The Doors,
Yeah, like every time you have to learn something new, there's like a cost involved of like the mental effort of paying attention to that, of incorporating that into how the reader or viewer or player now understands that world. And so I think thinking about it as like a cost thing is helpful, because it's like, how expensive do you want to make this? Like the more expensive it is mentally, the harder it is for them to follow the story, and the more exhausting it is, and the more it's literally work. Like every time you open up a book, for example, of a new fantasy world, there's work involved in you understanding that world so you can then appreciate it. And so it's like, don't make the readers do a lot of work. So drip it, like someone was saying in the comments, you drip it to them, but you don't want to have so much. Like it should be an amount that you can drip. If there's so much that's different that you have to like dump water on them constantly, then that's not going to work. They're just going to be like, I don't want to read this. This is too much.
Yeah. Or, the key is, if it's different, it should be interesting, and it should be interesting to the characters in that world,
and purposeful. Purposeful.
Yeah.
And purposeful. Yeah. Like sometimes it's fun. Like even like movies that are not considered great movies, but I like Dragon Slayer. I love the way magic was in the movie Dragon Slayer. It was so undersold and so like quirky and like what esoteric. Like I loved it. I think it's really about sometimes the execution of it, how you pull it off.
I'm not sure if that movie's not on our list or not, but I'm making a note.
I love Dragon Slayer. It was never a bit. It was so like for that era.
No retro nerd girl would want to talk about that.
Oh my God. Oh yeah. James Bacon jumped on it too. Like there was something about it was at an era where everything was over the top and like adventuresome. And then here's Dragon Slayer, this like gritty, like not so fun world with this really terrible dragon in it. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked.
Sable Phoenix says, I'm actually dabbling really at designing a rules-like game system that comes from the same motivation you were talking about, using the same resolutions for all combat. There's a lot of game design going around here because we come from the morning grind, which we do that. I was going to say that, something like the original. I was going to say, going to the other point, something like the original Star Trek. I can describe the original Star Trek to you, the world of the original Star Trek to you really easily. It's the future, and you can go really fast in a starship to get to other planets. So it's like, what it's like to be on a ship, like a Navy ship, except for this one, you can travel faster than the speed of light. So instead of going to another island, you go to another planet. And you still have guns, but instead of bullets, you shoot ray guns. And by the way, you can dematerialize and rematerialize.
Beaming. Yeah, that's the big one.
But that's okay. But humans are humans, and by the way, your medical technologies, if you get cut, yes, you can heal yourself, but that's
pretty, that you just described a whole world pretty quickly. So that's
and what that is, people understand what that is. And so that may have been,
and now there's like entire encyclopedias written about that universe.
No, look, it's Retro Nerd Girl. Oh, we're just
Hey, awesome.
Hey, Retro Nerd Girl.
Very cool.
Let's see.
Ask her if she's still there. Ask her if she wants to talk about Dragon Slayer.
You want to talk about Dragon Slayer?
I would love to talk about that. In fact, as a kid, one of my favorite scenes that I'll never forget is when he has the dragon scale shield, and that dragon, and he behind that shield, man, that was a great scene, and I had not seen anything like that before.
Yeah, there is an RPG called Lasers and Feelings.
Nice.
Really?
Yes. Excellent points. All, especially Brianna's crossword analogy and Doug's skipping record. Love both of these and agree 100%.
Look, we both had great analogies. Look at us go. Air high five.
All right.
Do the air high five, please. Don't leave me hanging. Air high five.
Here we go.
Thank you. Okay.
That's awesome. Three different states too, I think, right? Alabama, Texas, and Colorado.
Oh, that's true. We're all in very different states. Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else we need to say?
This has been a great one. This is like
it's so fun to talk about world building.
Yeah.
So fun. It's just there's something about it. It's like the kitchen of creativity. It's like this is where you're going to start cooking. It always starts with world building on some level,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this has been a fun
Retro
one.
Nerd Girl says it's been a while since I've seen Dragon Slayer. It was a unique one. Yeah.
Come on, Retro.
Yeah, I remember my uncle showing me that one, like having the whole family over and we watched it. We might have watched that the same night as we watched Baron Munchausen. It might have been a double feature. They may have been different times. I remember we watched Baron Munchausen the night of the Great Snowstorm. We were watching Baron Munchausen in the 1994 snowstorm here in Alabama.
Really?
Yeah. We thought that Baron Munchausen brought that upon us. Having watched that. All right.
A clash of genres there.
Do you want to what I'll do is I'll come over here. I'll put up, here you go, Doug. You want to tell everybody to come and pick up Faraway Bird. We're going to review it on the channel. So
it's not showing up, I don't think.
It's not showing up?
Just go down that hallway, and at the end of it, there's a library.
Yeah, at the end you will find
and in that library, there's a tome called Faraway Bird.
And it is very far away from where we are in this hallway.
Should be there.
Loading.
Yeah, I mean, everyone here probably knows me by now. Faraway Bird is my novel on the Byzantine Empress Theodora. Poured my heart into it, and I'm very proud of the book. If you won't read it, then just rate it a 5.
It was great. Why is it still not showing up?
It's not showing up. Are you not seeing it, Doug?
I see a long tunnel of something scary with a few. What looks like.
Oh, is that why you were saying that?
Yes, we're joking about the background. Yeah.
Oh well, no. On my screen it was showing it.
That's weird. I wonder why that's happening. There it goes.
Okay, there it is. Faraway Bird.
And I'll know how many gave it a 5 stars because it's at 190 now. So
that's great. You got 190 ratings and 4.3 on Goodreads. 184.
Oh, we Doug, we should do a actually. What am I saying? Why am I directing you? This is related to all three of us, but specifically you because you've also done a novel. It'd be fun to just do a talk someday just about self-publishing and like the strategy behind it and like.
Listen, again,
that's a deep rabbit hole, but
my passion comes from connecting with other creatives. I would love to talk about it specifically to help anyone else who's thinking about it.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of info on that too. That's a great topic.
I would be happy to talk about it purely to help other people because it's a unique journey all its own. It really costs some money that you may or may not want to spend, but it's the cost of doing business if you want to try to get out there. But I thought it was worth it. I actually love keeping control of my intellectual property. Even Heroine's Labyrinth, I had offers to traditionally publish it. I didn't want to do it because I wanted to publish it my way.
No, nice. That's such a bragging rights. I had offers, but nah.
Well, and I'm not saying that in a braggy way. I'm just saying my point is like it's fun to actually produce your own book. because nobody comes back and says, change this. We don't like that. It's up to you. Like, is this what you wanted to make? Is this the book you wanted to do? Do you have it? And honestly, a lot of YouTubers, I feel like they should write books. They obviously have a lot to say. If there's a topic they want to talk about, they should put it all down on paper and put it out there. You'd probably be surprised by how many people would buy it. So yeah, if you want to make that a topic, I'd be all in.
Yeah, it's a fun one.
Okay, I made note of that. I'll put it on our list. If you're wondering what I'm doing, my mouse went dead.
So Stable, my original title for the book was called The Girl from the Hippodrome. And
definitely an improvement.
Right
what's that?
I said definitely an improvement.
Okay.
Sable, Retro Nerd Girl also wants to hear about self-publishing. Okay, I wasn't watching. I was trying to get a new mouse hooked up. Yeah, title right here.
So my title was The Girl from the Hippodrome, and it was important because it actually played into a moment in the story where she needed they're like, well, how will she know? There's supposed to be a message sent to Justinian, and the woman is like, how will he know who I am? And she's like, tell him it's from, the girl from. There was an intimate account that only the girl from the Hippodrome, only Justinian would know who that is. So I like the title, but I was told that maybe, and if you notice, a lot of female-centric books are like the time traveler's wife, the daughter, so it's all this like, the wife, the daughter, the stepmom, like whatever. So the girl from the Hippodrome, Gone Girl, it was like a trend at the time. Mm-hmm. So the person helping me with publishing consulting, because if you read the book, and James, it sounds like you're at least starting it. There is a reason why it's called Faraway Bird. It has to do with a trauma, actually, and a way of dealing with that by not dealing with it in a sense. So anyway, it was recommended that I change the title to that because that became a symbol for her, which mattered at the end. And the sound Faraway Bird just sounded very good, very poetic. So I took her advice and agreed that's a better title.
Yeah. It's more memorable. That's why I was saying, like, it's, I can remember that one. Oh, even though I did with Heath call it the wrong thing once. I called it Flyaway Bird. So I did refer to it once, almost the right title. But
you're not the only one. There's been people like, hey, we're going to put this up in our periodical. And I'll look and it says like Flyaway Bird. And I'm like, the title's wrong.
Flyaway Bird. Fly away.
Yeah. Fly away. Get out of here. Shoo, bird.
So Brianna, City of Reckoning.
Yes.
Come and get that one as well.
You should get, and then if you want to click around in my world, that's Neurasia.com. That's NERASIA.com.
Oh, yeah. By the way, there are an entire glossary of terms back here.
Yeah. There is.
No, wait.
Oh, no. NER. It's like Asia, but NER at the end.
I know. I just mistyped, I believe.
What the heck? Oh, it's not secure. Oh, that's so funny that it's.
Oh no, you're not paid anymore. So the world, you're trying to go to a World Anvil.
Mm-hmm. It should still work. It worked for me a second ago.
Oh, it did. It worked for me a second ago too. Copy.
Try it again. What is it? Technical difficulties. It says it's not secure.
There it is.
Oh, there it goes. Okay.
I don't know. It did work.
Anyway, so that's just a redirect. Like that's on the.
Oh, here. Right. Right. So actually, Brianna's City of Reckoning, I had that typed up. So this is her link. But then if you want to go and see the world that it's in, it's
I figure that's worth putting at the end of this because it's the most relevant link.
Oh, here it is. Yes. So here is Brianna's World Anvil.
Now, and Brianna, so this is the book, this is the world to City of Reckoning.
To City of Reckoning, yes. What you see there at the bottom, what you're seeing right there, that fraction of the map, that's where this book takes place, and takes most of the place in that empire, and then we go over to the Kingdom of Dro a little bit too, and the wilderness in between. And,
there's Karina. I found the name that you said. Means, affectionate love, right?
Yes.
Kindy and Jensen.
And also subscribe to her.
All of the things.
I am looking forward to reading this, Brianna.
I'm looking forward to reading yours too and having our discussions about our books. I feel like that'll be fun.
we're gonna have discussions on the books. We're gonna have to start doing. I got a lot of reading to do, a lot of writing to do, and a lot of reading to do. I'm trying to.
Well, that's what's awesome about this channel. It's with a mind toward creation.
Yeah. We're not here just.
I don't know where my link.
Oh,
there's my link.
The things that Hollywood's giving us or whatever. We're creators.
Well,
we're creating.
That's been a big part of what I wanted to create here. That we are creators. We are creating. If you don't like other things that people are creating, well, do it yourself. So that's why we promote that on the Morning Grind, doing our own thing, and then also here interview people who are creating their own stuff and making things happen. So Goodnight Sword, if you are looking for Goodnight, a story of the style of Goodnight Moon for a child of yours in your life, go to that link right there, get Goodnight Sword, free book right there, entire book. You can read it tonight, and then I'll let you know when the hard copy of the mountain goes. Hard copy of the mountain. I just saw Sable's comments. A hard
Wrong
copy
mountain
of the book
piece.
goes live. All right. Please like and subscribe. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. This was
Good
awesome.
night,
Great
everybody.
conversation.
See you later. This was fantastic. Good night, everyone.
Good night.